who shall speak without being recognized, or who shall not address council from the podium or other established speaker area. No person shall approach the dais of city council during meetings except council members and employees of the city, unless invited by a member of council. All persons shall at all times conduct themselves in accordance with council rules. Persons failing to do so shall be ruled out of order and may be directed at the discretion of the chair to be removed from the council chamber. Such person shall not thereafter be readmitted to the council chamber or city hall during the remainder of that day's meeting.
Thank you so very much. Okay, it is time for public comment. If anyone would like to address the board this morning, please come on up. Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Shepherd, she has some.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning. Allison Hewitt, East Tampa resident and business owner, and want to also apologize for not being as active recently. I have a family member dealing with brain cancer, and I have been at Moffitt oftentimes when you guys are meeting. I'm also going to read some of my comments because this agenda irritated me. So usually want to say good morning, Chair and CRA board members. Want to begin with acknowledging the importance of each item on the agenda, and collectively they point to a larger concern. And this is not simply a technical issue. This is a governance issue, an accountability issue, and ultimately a community impact issue. Let me start with the process, because everyone who understands when I stand up, process is very important to me. Usually under the City of Tampa workshop rules, the public is given 3 minutes per agenda item, and that we put the service agreement, performance measures, and community benefits agreement under one item only allows for 3 minutes for each one of these very important items. That means not community engagement. That is, as far as I'm concerned, a suppression, continued suppression of public input. So understand that I would have recommended that if you had a service agreement discussion, that you would have had an outside entity review and give you comments of how to be able to address the items, because internally you just had the person who has the contract, who does not have to work and that you can't make them work, review and be able to come up with recommendations for your service agreement. Although I have not seen any significant service agreement changes, to make sure that we had timelines, we have objectives, and we have things to be able to address. Also for the performance measures, not all communities are made equal. If they have one of the performance measures as to upload the meetings, if anyone has seen a West Tampa CRA CAC meeting, it's hard to watch. The camera jumps, and so if you allow that to be one of the mechanisms to just upload a meeting, then I say shame on you. One of the things that I would love to be able to see as performance measures is not the number of newsletters or media posts, but the number of blight reduction, increase in home ownership, and the business growth in the CRA districts. That we actually measure performance, not just activities. That we measure performance as the impact positively to the CRAs, and not just what the staff does to check a box. I have given you 3 memos for each one of the agenda items with my observations, statutes on how to be able to correct that, and examples on how to make sure we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this morning for public comment? Okay. Staff, welcome, Director McCray.
Good morning, Cedric McCray, Tampa CRA Director. So, we are here to discuss first the services agreement. As you know, dating back to last year, there was a lot of continuing conversation related to the services agreement, and we would have to set a workshop for a future date, being today. to have that discussion. If I could have the PowerPoint pulled up, please. Thank you. So with that, as most of you all know, and this is for the benefit of the folks that may be watching from afar, we have 9 community redevelopment areas and 3 development managers that will actually see the overall functions for those specific community redevelopment areas. The service agreement overview. Tampa CRA Board contracts with the City of Tampa to further redevelopment plans in each specific district. The agreement is to be approved as part of the annual budget process, and the service agreement ensures that the city is reimbursed for staffing and operational costs related to CRA services. So annually, when the budget is approved and we're in the budget cycle, which we are beginning that process now, with our community, having those conversations with our community advisory committees, and then bringing the budget formally to you all as a board in July. Normally, we try to align the services agreement as the budget for the October 1 budget is approved for the next fiscal year. And hopefully with this discussion, and I understand that there's probably going to be some conversations here, Attorney Shepard and we have staff that will be taking copious notes to build out a formal document, and then that information will be presented to the administration, and they will be allowed the opportunity to respond moving forward. Any questions?
Doesn't look like it. Thank you. Go ahead.
Right. So some of the services that are covered within the services agreement: implementation of community redevelopment plans. We partner with staff, whether it be city planning, real estate, and the like, to help move those and develop those community redevelopment plans. Service representation for property negotiations, acquisition, and disposition of property. We work very closely with the real estate department as it relates. We cannot negotiate or handle the environmentals and things of that nature. So there are certain departments within the city of Tampa that we lean on a regular basis. Assist with development of affordable housing within the CRAs, as you know, and I'll highlight East Tampa through the down payment assistance and the housing rehab and renovation program, where we spent a considerable amount of dollars in trying to meet the needs so that individuals are able to age in place and assist with housing rehab. Preservation, restoration, and relocation efforts. We have CRA that actually sits in a historic designated area, being Ybor City, so there are conversations that we have to have with Mr. Fernandez and his team related to certain things, whether it be grant related or rebricking, which is coming up soon. Provide draft scope of services for TIF projects likely to be funded by tax increment revenues. And the next one is the CRA shall pay the city for all services described in the service agreement. So across all the CRAs, budgetarily, dollars are allocated, and then we reimburse the city for the services that are rendered. Pause for any questions. So these are a list of the different departments within the city that we work with ongoing. And I'll highlight budget. We have a budget analyst, Ms. Gobble, who we're in constant communication with. She provides us monthly budget reports, and we then disseminate that information to our CACs and you all as board members when questions arise related to funding and budgetary items. The clerk's office, this meeting, our scheduled meetings monthly, documents that are uploaded to OnBase and then transmitted, all runs through our clerk's office. Economic opportunity, if there is a request for funding or things of that nature, and we don't have a necessary program to kind of help facilitate that with the business owner, we then lean on economic opportunity to assist in that. Facilities management, if we're talking about Union Station or other items that we may come in contact with or per board direction or funding source, so we housing community development. I also touched on real estate, purchasing, parks and recreation related to any type of ADA compliant equipment, stormwater ponds, mobility, revenue and finance. So we lean heavily on all of these departments on a regular basis. Here's just kind of highlight some of the responsibilities that are highlighted in the service agreement as it relates to the CRA director and reporting structure, also with the CRA board attorney who is present today, and roles and responsibilities of staff to ultimately work to achieve strategic objectives of the agency as a whole.
May I?
Yes, go right ahead.
Did you write these slides or did somebody else write them?
I wrote.
You wrote them. Because I wrote the last contract and it's not accurate. The CRA director does not report to the mayor on all CRA activities. The CRA director only reports to the mayor for administrative purposes. So this is entirely misleading. Sorry if you wrote it, probably somebody asked you to do this. On the slide before, yes, the CRA interfaces with essentially every city department, but most of them are only to the effect that CRA provides funding. So the city is a grant recipient, and if we're providing the arts area or the housing area or a facility owned by Tampa Union, by the city Tampa Union Station, we're providing the city with a grant, then the city implements it, but we're merely providing the grant. And it's true that the CRA utilizes purchasing and HR because we have to follow the rules related to the city. But some of this is very misleading, and I understand that the administration wants us to stay in our lane and focus on what city council can do and not on trying to represent the people, but we need to represent the interests of the people. And the fact is that this is a separate funding source, and not trying to argue with you, but I think we need to present accurate information to the public. Also, may I ask while I have the floor, I had a document that I wrote, and there's a document on top of it that's a list of objections. I think for fairness, that should have been included as a separate document, but can you tell me who wrote that and who made the decision to put it on top of my document in the file?
So as we were compiling information, I believe that was created, that the objections was a part of what you all received from Attorney Massey last year. So that was just included in.
I think for fairness or accuracy, it gives the impression that I object, that these are my objections and these are not my objections. I disagree with almost all of these. But I think, Madam Chair, I'll shut up and let him finish, but what I would recommend we do with board's approval is just go through, there are like 10 paragraphs in my version. I would just like to get feedback on each of the primary paragraphs. And if you all don't like them, that's fine. If you like them, then we can check them and ask somebody to modify the agreement and add them in.
Sure, I think that's a good way to go after, can you finish this presentation?
Yeah, if you.
No, that concludes my presentation. I just kind of wanted to set the stage and then.
Great. I have one question. I don't know about the rest of the board, but I have two of the same handout from Ms. Hewitt.
There's some different wording.
I have two of the exact same. The subject is community benefits and public participation. I have two of those. I have three. I have the performance measures. I have but I have two of the community benefits and public participation.
Here's
does anyone?
two different ones.
I only have one.
Oh, now I see the structural concern. Yeah, I'm sorry, Ms. Hewitt, do you have, I think we're all missing the structural concerns, or maybe, raise? It's three, right? Yes. Does anybody have the structural concerns?
I only have one now.
Yeah, here, I'll give you, Board Member Carlson, you can have the structural concerns ones back, but.
Could we?
No, I understand, but I wanted to make sure that we all have the documents that you asked us to have.
Could,
Three separate documents, one for each part of the motion.
could we also, could we, per Ms. Hewitt's recommendation, could we split the three items into three separate items so we could take, there's no.
Well, I need a motion.
So I make a motion to split the three items into three separate items so that we can take public input on each of them.
Do I have a second?
Say that again?
A motion to separate, per Ms. Hewitt's recommendation, there are three items on the agenda in one, and so just a motion to separate the three items so that the public can give input on each one separately.
Okay, here's some services agreements. And here,
Email from her?
Where we have it.
oh, I thought she's,
I passed them this way, and whatever was left was supposed to come down here.
okay,
So-
here, let me,
So my motion is to hear CRA services agreement as number one, annual performance measures number two, and then community benefits agreement number three, so that we can take public input on each of them separately. There's almost nobody here anyway, but just to take public input on those separately.
That's fine, second.
Okay, I have a motion from Board Member Carlson, a second from Board Member Maniscalco. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We did take public comment already, so we would have to modify the rules to do so.
But in a workshop, we take public comment after each item, right?
The
So,
agenda has one item, so you.
Yeah,
you
so-
separate that one
Yeah.
item into three.
Yeah.
So we get 4 public comments, because we already have a general.
We already had public comment, so if you want to, I apologize, I'm still under the weather. I should have asked this before we started, but if you want to do additional public comment after, since there's only, I think, 4 people in the room, I just need a motion for that.
yeah, so motion to take public comment after each of the 3 items.
That's fine.
You know, again, this is like, it's just a workshop, sorry.
No, go right ahead.
Again, this is just a workshop. I think we can lay this a little bit more informally than that structure. I think this is so, this has been kicked around a lot. I think this is just one big discussion. I don't think there's anything wrong, and honestly, if somebody the chair wants to give the deference to somebody responding to something specifically that we're discussing, I think that's fine too.
So is that a second?
I just don't think we have to overcomplicate it.
Well,
Okay, then I'll,
I didn't quite I'm sorry, but I didn't hear all of what you were saying. You're speaking kind of on the low side.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. But what I'm looking for is if something wrong, what do we change? So I haven't heard anything yet from anybody that what's wrong.
okay, we're not there yet.
Yeah, I know.
Why don't we
Okay.
just dig in on what we got on the agenda and then just move forward if we need to make some last minute modifications?
Okay, and I did not ask for an approval of the agenda, so I apologize. Can I get approved of the agenda? A
With the
motion?
changes that we just made.
Yeah, that does include the changes we just made. So I have a, but actually I had a motion on the floor about allowing public comment after each one. Did I get a second for that?
We didn't get a
Second, I'd second that.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, that's done. Now do I have a motion to approve the
moved.
agenda? I have a
Second.
motion from Board Member Clendenin, a second from Board Member Maniscalco. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, does everyone have all 3
Yes.
documents
So,
from Ms. Hewitt? Let's just start there.
Service agreement, insufficient outcome, community benefit.
Everybody? Okay. The only one missing, I believe that the service agreement, we're missing 1 copy for the clerk. But other than that, we're good. Okay, so now opens up the conversation, and Board Member Carlson, if you want to go paragraph by paragraph, would you like to do that on the Wolf so that the public can see it as we're talking about it? Or do you want someone to put it on the Wolf so that we can do that?
I can do it if you want.
No, I mean, we can, yeah, okay, I'm sorry, Director McCray said he would do that.
Thank you.
And that way, we can be talking about it while we're looking, and we're looking at the,
So skip to page 4.
which document?
Oh,
are we
the
looking?
document is the one that has, I think on your copy, it has all these objections on the top of it, which shouldn't
Okay,
be
the
there.
objections on the top.
It says
So
at
the
the
second
top
page
left,
is page 1.
the top left, it says draft contract, and then page 4 of that. It says, at the bottom, it says Carlson version, November 12.
Okay. Board Member Clendenin.
It's just for the record and for people who are watching, can we, right from the beginning, since we have all these documents in front of us, the one that has that had that one objections on the front, it says draft contract, can we name this so we are clear, this is Carlson's document?
Yeah.
And then the one that is the CR resolution number 2025
Yeah.
on the top, we name that what would that be called? The
Existing contract.
Is it the existing contract, okay.
Existing, okay.
Okay.
And then on top of the list of CRA agreements, we want to call those objections? Or
Who's,
That's more.
Mr. Shepherd, were these your notes on Carlson's document?
No, sir. What happened is,
Morris.
I was asked, in fact, I think I was asked by several of you all to provide a red line copy if it could be red line. It was difficult because it's
Yeah,
pretty
I
much
have
a
the red line
rewrite.
copy.
Okay.
And in addition, and Mr. Massey did that, and in addition, he supplied the comments from this perspective of the city, of the problems they see with the agreement.
So this,
Okay, so we'll
we
call
can
it
label
city.
this city problems, city objections, or
City issues.
Administration's objections.
City issues.
Okay, city.
Okay, so we have existing Carlson and city issues. If you rip the city issues off of the stapled, then you have 3 documents.
So-
Yes.
May I first on the existing agreement, go to page 6, the last paragraph at the bottom.
Existing agreement, page
And
6.
it's in the section A, CRA director, CRA attorney, and CRA. This is the existing agreement. It says in the last paragraph, the CRA director will serve as the primary liaison to the CRA board. The CRA director will report functionally to the CRA board and administratively to the mayor. It doesn't say anything about reporting all activities to the mayor. I just want to make that clear. I wrote this, or wrote a version of it. What happened before, before I joined council and the CRA board, or even at the beginning, the mayor's economic development person was about 50% paid by the CRA, and it was run as essentially a funding source. Charlie was on the board, so you can disagree, but it was run as a funding source for the city. It's a different way of looking at things, but what happened is that they looked at it as a funding source for real estate development connected to connected to the city's initiative. And that's how we ended up with things like the $100 million subsidy for Water Street. So when I came on board and my colleagues agreed, we wanted to focus more on economic development instead of just real estate development. And so we started to change things. We're limited by, 163 in terms of what we can do. But we started to shift, and we created the position of executive director. That language you just saw is only about 6 or 7 years old in the agreement. And we made some other changes. It was very real estate heavy and very dependent on the city. So I'll go to the new the new sections. I'm proposing
Carlson's.
Carlson document.
Label it you,
Carlson document, page 4. And what I'll do is I'll just read each of these paragraphs. The whereas, I cut and pasted it, and they provided some comments to it, but I may have cut and pasted from the wrong document, but I cut and pasted them.
So what we're saying is you would not mind keeping the whereases
Yeah, the whereas
from the original. Okay.
If we need them,
Okay.
they're as they are. So just to go through these, most contracts have some kind of purpose. The existing contract just starts with whereases and it goes into what the city's going to provide. And so this just simply says the Tampa CRA exists under state law and an interlocal agreement to create and implement the community redevelopment plans for each CRA district. To keep overhead low and to maximize taxpayer return, Tampa CRA will act as a grant-making organization to support and leverage the work of other organizations in implementing the CRPs. Well,
Okay,
And
board
what's the-
member Clendenin?
Sorry.
there is not an equivalent of that in the existing agreement. This is
Because
just
that seems very exclusive to grant-making organization. The scope and scale of the CRA exceeds that definition. We'll go beyond grant-making. Wouldn't you
So
agree?
this,
That seems too limiting for what the scope of the CRA is.
Board member Miranda.
I'm just thinking, I mean, branding, what does that mean? What are we branding for? We have 7, 8 CRAs, whatever, and they're all different. You brand them differently within the city, but we're not branding nationwide about the CRA.
we haven't gotten to that section.
No, I'm just thinking ahead. I'm one step, I don't want to fall one step behind. So what I'm saying is that I'm just looking at all this and I'm telling myself, okay, but I'll speak later. I just hold on to later.
Board member Clendenin.
So, I mean, I'm just curious your thought process. Why would you limit the CRA to just grant making and exclude the other parts?
It's important to put, I think it's important to put that in there because if you go back to the slide that he showed a few minutes ago on all the services that the city purports that we get from the city, the construction services and all that on Tampa Union Station have nothing to do really with the CRA. The CRA is only providing money and then some oversight. The same thing with Stratus Center, Tampa Theater, et cetera. Ashley Street project, we're not overseeing and implementing those, and we're not using the services of the city. We're only giving the money to the city, and then the city implements it. I mean, I don't know,
I'm concerned because I'm looking at the red line version of purpose that also included, and what I liked about the original one is it says consisting of but not limited to, because the issue is, under number 2 of the red line for purpose, it says, acquisition of real property. And that's something we can do, that if the purpose isn't if it's not in the purpose, I'm worried that we won't be able to acquire property.
Exactly.
And then under that, when it says, assist the agency in identifying, justifying, negotiating, and monitoring the rehabilitation, adaptation, expansion, or restoration of real property, and the buildings located thereon in the manner prescribed by the agency consistent with the Redevelopment Act, that means, I'm concerned we wouldn't be able to participate in the rehabilitation of things, that we would leave that to the city. And then number 4, where it says developing structure relocation and preservation and restoration of historic structures, that would mean we couldn't participate in even making the plans for Tampa Union Station and the Jackson House, among other historical properties. So that's my concern. I don't want to limit us, and
there is no, the thing, I don't know where this red line came from.
That's what I'm asking.
Because there's no purpose in the existing contract. We're not, none of this existed. I don't know where this came from. Maybe they were editing this internally or something, but in any of those cases you mentioned, all we're doing is providing the money. Like even in the case of the Army Navy, we're providing the money. We're not holding the property. The city's holding the property. We pay for it, and we observe to make sure that they are using the property in the right way, but the CRA itself is not holding property, correct?
So the CRA had nothing to do with deciding what needed to be done with Tampa. We didn't have to approve what needed to be done to Tampa Union Station?
Tampa Union Station that is owned by the city. Unlike Tampa Theater, for example, which has a nonprofit, we give the money to the nonprofit, and the nonprofit oversees it working with the city. In the case of Tampa Union, and so we don't have to interface with the city there, the nonprofit does that. In the case of Tampa Union Station, the city controls everything, and we provide the money to them, and we just make sure the money is being used correctly. But we should not be, if the city is providing services for Tampa Union Station or for Tampa Theater, that's not because the CRA wanted them to. We're providing the grant, and it's because it's a city facility they do it. Let's say that CDC needs money to repair one of their facilities. We're not going to go in with our team and micromanage that. We're just going to provide the grant.
Can we simply just take out, to keep overhead low and maximize taxpayer return, CRA will act as a grant-making organization? Because again, I'm really concerned about not being able to buy property. That's my number one, and I'm seeing, so Mr. Shepherd, can you want to weigh in on this?
I don't want to weigh in from a policy standpoint, because obviously that's not my goal. But when I'm advising CRAs, or any government agency for that matter, I would strongly suggest that they very much think about whether they want to clip their own wings.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's essentially what is going on here. It is not a problem to emphasize that you spend a lot of time and a lot of resources on grant making, and I know personally that I have spent a ton of time working with staff on making your grants better, stronger, more cohesive with what the statute provides. But the idea that you couldn't, if you chose to, go build a sidewalk as the CRA, or insert a regional stormwater pond for a specific CRA, or buy buildings and then convert them to CRA approved projects, which you could now, is something that literally means you're doing this to yourself, but I don't know what the upside is. I would say, if I was drafting this on that issue, in grant making, which is clearly important, is a thing, I would say we accept and recognize all legal purposes that are allowed to us under the statutes, especially or including or emphasize, however you want to do it. But in essence, even though I don't think that's the intention, the wording would make it appear that you are essentially not doing a lot of things that you would have the right to do, whether you ever did them or not.
What about adding the word Tampa CRA will primarily act as a grant-making organization? Would that?
That's up to you guys.
I'm okay with it. The two issues, number one, we get feedback about overhead, and as we keep adding and adding staff. But the second thing is that, as you saw in that slide a few minutes ago, the city says, well, look at all these services we're providing. Well, if all the construction people and contract administration people who are renovating Tampa Union Station, if the city is claiming that that's a service for the CRA, it's wrong. All we're doing is providing the money and the oversight that the money is being used correctly. The CRA is not managing a project. Same thing with Army, Navy, or any of the rest of them. I'm fine with what the chair recommended, by the way.
Board Member Clendenin.
I'm having a hard time trying to reconcile the existing contract with Councilman, Board Member Carlson's draft, and I asked Sam to print me the red line version because I don't have it in front of me, and with the city issues. Do you feel like this was just completely the current existing contract is so fatally flawed that we have to start from scratch rather than use the legal structure and the framework of this contract to be able to modify it to be able to fulfill what you need? Because what I'm feeling though is that a lot of the legal side of the house, which we don't have any lawyers up here today. A lot of the lawyers are working on that we're not all qualified to do. I feel like we're better be served starting with a legal document and figuring out what we can change to meet what you observe as deficiencies or maybe tweaks or needs that that are unmet. So is it possible that we could use the existing contract and then take what you have and find where it is applicable in the existing contract and make those modifications along with the city issues? Is that possible?
No, I think if the legal issues are this, and this is the problem we have with I don't know how last night went, or tonight, is with the Charter Review Commission, but there are different ways of interpreting the law, and if you're representing the mayor, you'll have one interpretation. If you represent city council, you have a different interpretation. This existing document is much better than it was 8 years ago, but it's still written in a way that is.
You wrote this, right? Is that what I heard you say?
No, he was talking about
The existing contract, I wrote parts of it, I heavily edited it 8 years ago, but I didn't rewrite it like I did this version. And what we did is we cleaned it up so it was not so real estate heavy. The way it was written before is that the CRA was a funding source for real estate subsidies. And we've expanded it way beyond that, following the law, but there were all these other possibilities of things we could do. And even as Mr. McCrae's slide just showed, there's a misinterpretation by the administration. Somehow, even staff believes that they report to the mayor for activities, and that's not true. And it even in the existing contract, it doesn't say that. And what this does is it makes all that clearer. And I'm not proposing that unlike what some of the claims are, I'm not proposing that we completely spin this out. I'm not proposing that we disengage from the city. I look at it as still being involved, but to clarify, mostly so staff knows. One of the things that's not in here in the existing contract is that it does not clearly say that other staff report to the executive director, and we need to add that in when we get down further. There's nothing in here that's really controversial. It just further clarifies.
Well, there's just an awful lot of stuff in the legal contract that.
Does everyone do you want a copy of this?
Sam's printing one for me.
Yes, but I'm just asking if the rest of the board.
I don't know
would
what
like
that's
one?
edited from, so to me it's irrelevant, but it has somebody else's ideas.
Miss Sharf, if you could come and grab this and make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 copies. I don't know. This was in my file from the last time we talked about
I
this.
think that was Mr. Shepherd said he did that.
Mr. Shepherd, is this
I can't see it that far.
Oh, here.
But I think it's the one that was done by Morris.
Oh, by Morris, okay.
Oh, is that done by Morris?
I think so.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ross.
Sam's getting it for us.
Oh, okay. He's got it right now, sorry.
So,
I can go back and check my emails, but I'm pretty sure that these documents were provided to me, this and the objections, or whatever you want to call
Okay.
it, were provided by Morris.
Okay.
so we've stipulated that the whereases, so pages 1 and
Thank
2 of
you.
the existing are
I
okay,
think
correct?
everybody but me, because I
Okay.
have that one.
So, Madam
7
Chair,
plus the clerk.
so we can move past this. I believe, Ms. Carlson, I think we're all stipulating that pages 1 and 2 of the existing contract, the whereases are fine, so we don't have to talk about that. We can stipulate.
Yes,
that we're
I
gonna
will,
accept those.
so I will make Director McCray, will you keep a running log of this? So the first thing we're saying, Oh, you are as well. Perfect. So I've got double.
I'm gonna have to draft it.
Yes, very fair. So, so we will, how
Can I
about
s-
that? We'll direct it to you and then,
Can I say,
yeah, Mr. Shepherd is keeping track. So we have a motion. Do we want to do this by motion? Is that easier or just?
I think stipulating.
Okay, stipulate, so we're gonna keep the whereases
So, I got
from
the whereases
the
on-
2025 contract.
can I just say one thing about it? One thing I did change was that in most places where it says city council, I added the CRA board.
Yes, I think that was a very good
In the whereas
addition.
portions of it?
So
Yeah.
every time there's city council, we want to include and the CRA board.
To the attorney's discretion if there's one that doesn't make sense.
Right, I got it.
That'd be a Scrivener's,
So-
that'd be a Scrivener's thing.
So moved.
Yeah, we're just gonna give him,
Oh,
we're
okay.
not doing,
Okay.
I think it's probably easier. This way,
Are you guys okay with the purpose if we add the word that the chair added in?
Tampa CRA will primarily act as a grant-making organization.
Again, I don't understand why we're clipping our wings.
Can I make a suggestion that I
Yes.
think will accomplish both
Okay.
ends? Most, if you've ever seen city charters, and I'm sure you have, they claim all the authority that are allowed under the statute. I suggest we do the same.
Right.
So
So-
that the first sentence would be, the Tampa CRA exists under state law and essentially claims all powers and rights and obligations provided by state law. And then you can go on to say, to keep overhead low, blah, 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 will primarily act as. But that way, it's very clear, you're not giving up anything. Because whether you do it now or not, I don't know who's gonna sit here in the future.
Yeah.
Don't know who's gonna sit here in the future.
Yeah.
But I don't want them to feel like things that they could legally do under the statute have been clipped by an agreement that was not the intention.
I agree with what he just said. Does everybody
Okay.
agree to that?
Yeah, I think that works. So, could you just, so the Tampa CRA exists under state law and interlocal agreement.
So,
And-
how about let's just let, Mr. Shepherd work on that
Yeah,
legal
okay.
language, yeah.
So yes, you have that. That works. Thank you so much. This is going very well. Okay, so are we set on purpose for now?
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to obligation to the tax-paying public.
The-
Board Member Carlson.
Yeah, the next one is simply to explain, when I first started 7 years ago, I had, from the dais, I had a conversation with staff about the CRA money, and it is collected in a district and it's spent in the district, but people who don't have CRAs, they feel like rightly so that they're subsidizing it. And so this is simply to state that, that there's an obligation not only to the, and this is more of like a moral obligation to not only the people within the CRA district, but the residents outside, so that we're not spending on frivolous things, because otherwise the people in other districts would say, well, why don't you just move that money to us?
Board Member Miranda.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and just what Councilman Carlson said, and that's agreeable, but when we realized without the CRA, we would have a city, and I understand the public's need that are not in the CRA, but without the CRAs, we would have possibly, not say 100% sure, parts of the cities that were not being taken care of in one mannerism for whatever reason, rightly or wrongly, that they had fallen in despair. And these are why the CRAs were created, to make sure that there was an upswing so that the whole area, whatever city you're in, whatever CRA you're in, to make it comparable so that everybody would have a chance to have a better life. And these things have been accomplished, not only in this city, in a lot of cities. And since I'm on this thing, we're talking about different things about the CRA. I'm not here for the administration, I'm not here for the CRA, I'm here for both of us. And we think that way. We may not say it, but I'm saying it. We are both. We're the city council and the CRA, which is very difficult to do when you have to do both of them and not violate your own responsibility between one and the other. That being said, if I may ask some questions regarding this, I'd like to know the positions you started with 7 years ago, because we got 1 year left, so I would imagine 7 years back, we have 8 years of service. We have 1 year back as a city council member. And I'd like to know how many positions you had then and how many you have now. I'd like to know what your budget was then, what it is now. We're asking these questions and we're not coming up with definitive answers for the public can understand. And what I'd like to know is, in 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26, what did the city build you? And what had they not billed you for that they should have billed you for? I don't know. As a member of both bodies, I'm answering myself my own questions. So I'm saying, what are we doing? What are we doing, rightly or wrongly? So I would like to know for the public to understand what we need to have done in 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26. How much money you think you would have paid if you had to go to an outside agency other than using your own city? And there's a lot of talk here about who you talk to, who you don't talk to. I don't talk to anyone. But it is what it is. And I'd just like to know these answers so the public understands why we're here today and what are we doing to make this city better. No matter where you live, south, east, west, or north, or in the center of the city, everybody should be taken care of. That's what we're trying to do. That's our objective. Now, whether we reach those goals or not, that's up to us. Thank you.
Board Member Carlson,
know
would you
that-
like to respond?
The number, I don't remember the numbers exactly off the top of my head, but I think it went up by about 50%. Do you
Yes,
remember?
I don't know it right off the top of my head, but I
From
can verify.
I'll guess, I
if
think it was
if
like
you give me a
1.4
moment.
million at 2.4 or something like that. I don't know, am I in the ballpark? No, but if you all get it, you can let us know. Do you, and we probably doubled the number of staff too.
Yes, we're up to 21 currently.
How many?
21.
And all of that is in that document that you passed out. So do you all, I don't care if you don't agree with this paragraph, I don't care if we take it out, but I think it's important it's too bad Vieira's not here, but all the areas that don't have CRAs, they want to know that they're represented. And this is not a legal requirement, it's just a statement to make sure that everybody who's working on CRA understands that they might have a legal obligation to the people within the CRA district, but they also have a moral obligation to everybody outside.
Board Member Clendenin.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I think that's something that we all have to be aware as elected officials and responsible for the taxpayer resources. I don't necessarily know that it seems to be redundant to be into this legal document between us and the city as far as this interlocal agreement. Can I back up one step? Because we have page 3 of the existing agreement, which is be it resolved for the, that seems to be important too. So are we going to stipulate to this as well, that this needs to be retained? So we can keep moving, because my goal is to get out of here today with an agreement, so we don't have to talk about this again. So I want to make sure that we cover all the issues. Is page 3 fine? We can move past that?
And the next page too.
And the next page too?
So
Okay.
3 and 4 of the original agreement we will keep. Does that
Okay.
work for everyone?
Of the original agreement.
Of the,
Yeah.
no, I'm sorry, of the 2025 agreement,
Okay.
where it
2025,
says,
yeah.
be it resolved, and then the services agreement overview.
And with giving Cliff Shepherd the opportunity, if any kind of Scrivener's issues that need to be resolved, like
Correct.
adding the CRA board and staff.
Yeah.
Or-
That-
It's
or-
the
I'm sorry,
existing
city council.
agreement.
Yes, the existing
Existing
agreement, be it resolved. And
Okay.
then on the page behind that is the services agreement overview. But I have a question here for this. My concern is that it specifies public safety, because the CRA does pay for extra public safety in in several different CRA groups. So I think that is confusing for folks, because they do pay for public safety. Not only that, if we were to keep this, I would want to include the statute number and not just say by law. I would like it to be very specific.
See, and with all deference to you, Mr. Carlson, it seems as though, Board Member Carlson, all this is kind of like, I think you even acknowledged that, it's just a restating of facts that, there's not, in other words, if this wasn't here, all this would, with the exception of those kind of
Well,
things.
the only reason I included it is that 7 years ago, CRA staff were standing up there at the podium, and I was having this discussion with them. And the reason why public safety is in there is because most of, other than CRA money, all the property taxes go to public safety. And so, when we're talking about baseball, if the Drew Park CRA money goes to baseball, and I'm not picking on them, but if it does, who's going to pay the public safety in that area? The rest of the people in the rest of the city are going to pay for it. So I don't care if you guys don't want this paragraph, we can take it out. If you want to modify it, fine. I think that it's good to identify that the constituents are not just the ones within the districts, but also outside. That's the main purpose of this.
Yeah, I think it's, I would just assume eliminate that one if you don't mind.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next one.
Okay, we'll take that part out. The name, I think, is pretty self-explanatory.
I concur.
And there was a note in the objections about this, but this is already, if you look at the documents like the one that Cedric passed out on the plan, this is already the short form. Organizations always have DBAs or marketing names or short names. This already exists. So I'm not saying that we change the legal name of it. It's just that we want, and in particular referring to city staff as they're referring to us, we want to be called Tampa CRA, and that's what they're already doing.
So it should just be also known as, right?
Yeah.
So maybe keep this with any Scrivener error that Cliff would like to add.
How about the legal name of the agency is Tampa Community Redevelopment Agency, also known as Tampa CRA?
Well, the purpose of this is just to say that, and we're going to get to communication in a minute, but that in any communication, it will be referred to as Tampa CRA.
The only thing, this is from the editor and me, that a lot of people don't know what Tampa CRA stands for. So in marketing and communications, generally the first time you mention something, you want to spell the whole thing out so people know. So that's why I think the whereas or the AKA works better, instead of just saying we can call it Tampa CRA all the time. That's my only concern.
Okay. So if Mr. Shepherd has that, then we'll make.
Yeah, I do. The only thing I would comment on is, I don't know what it's attempting to do, except to say that you have a short name. We do that in legal documents all the time. Instead of saying a long case, you know,
Yeah.
Smith versus blah, 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 we say the Smith case. So that's understood. But if you're trying to say that it will always be called Tampa CRA in marketing purposes, that's not what this says. It says if you're going to use a short name, the Tampa CRA is the shoot. It does not tie you to using that name every time, because you could certainly also use the Tampa Community Redevelopment Agency. But if you're going to shorten it, you're going to do it actually, this is the way you shorten it.
Interchangeable.
Yeah. So
Correct.
could also known as work just as well?
That could work, and if that's what you want, I can put it in there.
The only reason I think that works better is because this specifies only marketing and communications, and I think it's better off if we can make it throughout the whole agency.
Always interchangeable.
Yeah.
Okay, so that one approved with what modifications that, and I assume, Mr. Shepherd, I'll happy to work with you. We can,
Yes.
and whoever commented, but we can come up with a red line or something and then come back next time to approve. So the next one is called branding. I know there's an objection to that word, but branding means a lot of different things in the marketing realm. And I'm not talking about running ads that say this Tampa CRA is great. That is obviously not allowed. But in this context, branding just means how we're going to refer to it. So Tampa CRA is a separate legal entity that chooses to outsource services to the city, and any communication by Tampa CRA or the city, Tampa CRA must be separately identified, and no implication should be made that they are the same entity. Tampa CRA has its own logo and brand definitions that should be used in any communication by either organization. The purpose of this branding is to clearly show the public that Tampa CRA funding is not the same as city funding. And two examples of this, again, this is not about running ads. This is just this context of branding is about the name and logo, which we've already approved. We're already using that. But two examples, when the first modifications were made to the 7th Avenue bricks, the city handled the press conference, and it looked like it was the city, and so we got a lot of criticism. Why are we using city money to redo a perfectly good road to put bricks in when it should have been used to fill potholes? Now it's being separately identified as Tampa CRA, and some people still may complain, but at least people know that it's CRA money, and by definition that cannot be used in other parts of the city. Another example was several years ago we provided $1 million for the Jackson House. Jeff Vinnick proposed matching that with $1 million, and then suddenly there was a press conference that we didn't know about where the mayor and Jeff Vinnick were standing together, and the mayor said she was going to match the $1 million. The city was going to match the $1 million of Jeff Vinnick, and it turns out she was referring to the CRA money, not the city's money, and that confused even the Jackson House Foundation. And so those are the kinds of things that we want to try to correct. In the past, I remember when Joe Citro was chair of the CRA, the staff were saying, well, we're going to have this press conference coming up, and he said, as I told you, I can't attend that. And I said, why Why are you setting up a press conference when the chair of the CRA can't attend? The chair of the CRA is the most important person that has to attend the press conferences. But they were being built, the press conferences were being built around the city's objectives, not the CRA's objectives, and we changed that. And so this is just saying that if it's a CRA project, it has to say Tampa CRA on it.
Board Member Clendenin.
I support this 100%. Is there any, what you're trying to, because I've observed the same things that you've observed. Is there any place in the existing contract that, or what about your standard operating procedures that this already exists? Or is it, how do we handle these things? What's?
Director McCrash.
No?
No.
So this needs to be a new this needs to be a new paragraph into the.
I would emphasize that it even needs to go further, because I was at that bricking press conference and I was chair of the CRA at the time, and I was hopping mad. Miss Parks remembers. I went up to her afterwards and I was like, why is this being led by the mayor? The mayor's not doing any, I mean, this is not a city project. So I think we need to have very clear, and it goes to the dog park that we just did the ribbon cutting at, please help me.
Curtis Hickson.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm still very slow. At Curtis Hickson, you should have been the primary. Or, I'm sorry, Lewis should have been the primary. And if Lewis wasn't the primary, then I should have been the primary. But he wasn't there. So it should have been led by the chair of the CRA, because that was where the money was coming from. It was not a city project. So I agree, and whatever we need to do, I think what we actually need to, the takeaway from this is that this works, but we also need to create standard operating procedures for anything funded by the CRA to make sure that it's the CRA that does the press conference. Now, if you are contracting that out as part of the communications that the city provides, that's fine, but it's a CRA and you all lead it. The communications part of the CRA leads that press conference. If the city would like to attend, that is fine.
Well,
I agree.
I want to maybe divide that maybe a little bit, because I don't think we could ignore the fact that, we don't have the staff that, like the construction part, there is a lot of city.
Sure.
So I think it
But
is a job.
led.
It's led by, but there is, I don't think we can dismiss that the city is part of that process.
No, not at all.
Some of them,
Not
some
at
of the
all.
announcements now, I think the new rebricking one, or at least some of them that I've seen recently, have the CRA logo, and next to it has the City of Tampa seal.
Right.
Well, that's the city trying to take credit for it, but that backfires, because if it's rebricking, when people see the City of Tampa seal, they're going to think that we're using regular City of Tampa money, and we're going to get a lot of complaints about that. And I think we need to look at this from a constituent communication point of view, not a political point of view. It's not about the rebricking or the Jackson House is not about whether City Council or the mayor get credit. It's so that the public understands where the money's coming from and why it can't be spent on their potholes or sewage problems or whatever.
Can I ask Mr. Shepherd a question?
Yes, yes.
Mr. Shepherd, so you've dealt with CRAs around the state.
Yes.
How do other CRAs deal with these issues? Do they?
Of like branding,
Yeah.
they don't really have this issue. I mean, to be honest, part of the reason I think you have this issue is because of the unique way that your governance is set up. I've dealt with and have two of the strong mayor cities in Orange County I represent, but they are strong mayors in a more traditional sense. The strong mayor sits right now where Ms. Hertak's sitting, is a voting member of council, can make personnel decisions, but when they are acting as a CRA, they're hand in glove. It's not some separate entity over in a different corner of City Hall that can direct things and never has to participate in the political arena except when they're running for election. So it's a different situation, and the goal to distinguish CRA projects from the city projects is not the same, because they all want to distinguish CRA projects from city projects, because they want people to understand why we have a CRA and not to want to get rid of the CRA. So it is not something I can say, oh, well, here's an example of where they've had this problem and how they dealt with it, because it's unique. Now, where I suggest it probably would exist, if it exists at all, because your model is like Jacksonville, your model is like Orlando. And I don't represent, I do represent Jack's Beach, but I don't represent Orlando. But because of their structure being similar to your structure, I would imagine they might have the same issues. But most cities do not. Because the strong mayor sits right where you are.
So can I go to the next one?
Well, what are we? Okay, so we can keep the branding part. Okay, yes, moving on to communication.
So just for clarity, And Shepherd's, Attorney Shepherd's, so for when he drafts this document, we're going to incorporate the branding portion of the Councilman Carlson's draft into the final document.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
With Scrivener.
Oh, yeah,
clarity.
Board Member Young.
I think also just adding in what you said, the standard operating procedures for like press conference and.
Yes,
Okay.
but that probably should not, that would not be part of this document. That would be something that
Okay.
the communications team for the CRA needs to
Direction we
bring.
give them.
Yeah, so that would be something for the future.
It also gets into the next item.
Oh, okay, great.
So communication, we need to change this in the charter, but the communication department should report to council and the mayor. They should not just be a political propaganda tool. In this case, it's about communicating carefully with the public to explain why the money is being used the way it is. And so I'll just, do you want me to read it? Or the city of Tampa the city shall supply Tampa CRA with a communication professional who will report to the Tampa CRA executive director.
Just one moment, Board Member Carlson. This is on the Wolf. If they could put it up so that the public can see as he's reading. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I just
thank you.
wanted to-
So the person will report to the CRA director and the CRA board. Any Tampa CRA communication will be led by and coordinated with the Tampa CRA communication professional. The purpose of the communication professional is to help the CRA board better communicate with the public and potential grant applications. If the city or any other outside party is communicating about a Tampa CRA funded project, Tampa CRA must be clearly identified as the funding source of the project by logo and description. Communication should also state that Tampa CRA is funded by property taxes collected in a CRA district that must by law be spent in that CRA district. Any press conference, press release, or other communication about a Tampa CRA project with the city must be led by the Tampa CRA communication professional and must be first scheduled around the Tampa CRA board chair and other CRA board members. The Tampa CRA board chair will lead any press conferences for Tampa CRA funded projects and must be mentioned first in any press releases or other communications so that the public will clearly know where the funding came from and how investments are limited by law. In city budget and other communication, Tampa CRA projects or budgets must be separately and clearly delineated from the city budgets and projects. The last point is that 6 or 7 years ago, we approved putting 30% of, because the CRA law specifically says slum, blight, and affordable housing, but we had never really spent money on affordable housing. So we passed a motion to spend 30% of our money across the board on affordable housing. But then when the mayor presented her budget on affordable housing, almost all of it was the CRA money, and it was not separately delineated. And so all this is saying is that if the city of Tampa talks about CRA money, look, for example, if they say we're spending all this money on the arts and this is a positive thing, okay, they have to delineate part of it was CRA money. If the city is putting in money separately, fine, but if they're using CRA money, the public needs to know that it's CRA money. That's all this is saying, to separately delineate.
Yes, sir.
So I hear what you're saying. I don't disagree with any of it, but I'm curious about, is this a separately funded position paid for by the CRA?
I think we already have this. Did we hire somebody?
No, we have not.
But it was a,
I know we talked about it.
B was doing it for a while and then, right? And then.
Correct.
And then you were trying to hire somebody. Correct.
But this person would report to the communication.
No, they would report to the director. Just
But
like
would work with.
there's a paragraph later here
Right.
that, yeah, they have to coordinate, but what happened, like in the case of the Jackson House, suddenly there was a press conference that even to us looked like it was a city press conference, and it turns out it was all CRA and we weren't even invited.
But
So-
what you're saying, you said the city shall supply Tampa Sierra with a communication professional.
as part of the,
So they're gonna supply. So that would exclude it from CRA directly. That
Yeah.
would be Adam supplying us with the CRA.
Yeah.
no,
As I'm
okay.
confused.
The city is providing all these positions. So maybe that's a Scrivener's thing. Can we, Mr. Cliff, can we just work on that to make sure it doesn't have the wrong implication? Well, the executive director position is supplied by the city. all the positions are, and if I got the wording wrong, maybe we can go through it. Can you just mark them, let's
Yeah,
go
I'm
look at what the
gonna
legal
write this
meaning of
down
that.
now.
And
But I want to raise something up here, so let me write that note.
and follow up to that.
Well, he wants to
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
do a note real quick.
Okay.
So here's my question, and I apologize for not knowing the answers. This is one maybe that I should know. When we get this agreement, who is our other side? Am I going to be, I know I just heard that Mr. Massey's retiring. Am I going to be negotiating with Mr. Steady? Am I, because we're writing one side of this agreement, and y'all also sit on the other side of the
Yeah.
agreement, as well as the administration.
With 5 votes, we can approve it on the other side too, so hopefully
That's
the
what I'm trying to
administration will
figure
come
out.
with us, yeah.
And the reason that's important is because I'm trying to wonder, I've heard complaints different times about how we didn't get recognition for what was a CRA project when it was handled through the administration. How would we enforce a breach? When you're looking at contracts, one of the things you try to do as a lawyer is say, okay, let's suppose things go south and they don't do what we've asked them to do. What then?
Oh, that what then is a constantly recurring theme.
Yes, that is the city council theme song,
Okay,
right?
well, all right,
That is a constantly recurring theme. In fact, I'm
Yeah.
sure tonight when I'm at the Charter Review Board, that theme will be sung tonight as well.
okay,
Yeah, because I mean, we don't have a Supreme Court.
okay.
I mean, so we have a
Yeah.
legislative and executive branch of government. We do not have a Supreme Court.
And it's
yeah.
You're looking for volunteers?
And the city,
it's needlessly combative.
the city council attorney has no power to hire outside attorneys or to hire investigators or to, and also the charter says that the city attorney is the final legal word on the city. And so whatever our attorneys say, they override it. And so we
Hence
need
the
to make
charter
sure that,
review.
yeah, we need to make sure the city attorney reports to us too.
So is that my only concern about this, Board Member Carlson, is that one communication staff person doesn't bake this full cake. And we have a diverse communication department of, social media, technology. I mean, there's a lot of resources there. And so, I mean, I could see somehow we have to figure out, and I understand the natural conflict here, but somehow, you know how I am about integration between the CRO and city staff. I would like to be able to figure out if we can institutionalize that we have that relationship, but I don't want to have, I don't think we need to build an artificial wall between the communication department and CRA because they have so many other resources. They have a studio, they have, again, all of these people that do these types of communication and production and.
I think it doesn't prohibit it, but also we have HCP, which is in the back, and they did the annual report again. That's an excellent document. It accurately
Right.
projects it. I mean, the annual report 8 years ago when I started had the mayor's picture, former mayor's picture, like on the front of it, and then the CRA board was like deep inside it, and it was completely opposite because technically the mayor has no role, and so we've changed a lot of that stuff to make it more accurate. And I don't want to get in politics, but anyway.
Yeah, I would just, my question is in the real world application of this, and again, I'm supportive of the concept. In the real world application of this though, can we embed our person with the communication department?
No, if in a normal situation where the mayor's office and the city council get along and the communication department is benevolent, then we can do that. But what happens is that what happens is that if a city council member is doing what the mayor likes, the communication department gives resources and promotes the city council member. And as soon as you vote against them, they retaliate. Yep. And that's why I stopped going to press conferences, because I went to the Strat Center opening, which was the mayor fought heavily, eviscerated us for proposing that money. And then she takes front billing at the event as if it was her idea, didn't acknowledge the CRA. And we didn't have any seats. We had to sit in the back. The only picture that was taken of me was one of me I had hurt my back that morning, and as I was sitting down, I grimaced on my face, and they posted that picture. I mean, this is what opposition people in third world countries do, making opposition people look bad. And then when the shovel turning was happening, there were no shovels for the CRA board, and so in a normal situation where there's collaboration between the mayor's office and council, that's fine. But if anybody is being collaborative right now, vote against the administration and see what happens. They'll go against you. And so we need to try to make sure that we can control our own destiny, because their interest is not the public, and they're not working to accurately explain what the CRA is doing.
Unfortunately, though, I think this goes back to Mr. Shepherd's question of how do we, what's the recourse? But, Board Member Miranda?
Thank you. I'm just a little different, maybe. Maybe what a brand the United States of America, you can't say USA. I mean, what's wrong with us? We're trying to split hairs here I have no hairs left. I mean, it's getting to be to the point I said, what am I doing here? I mean, reality is, all of us, no matter what side you're on, this side or this side, is one thing in mind when you get elected: to leave it better than when you got in. And we've done that on both sides of the aisle. I don't care, and I don't give a damn what the mayor does or doesn't do. That position belongs to somebody else, not me. I don't want to be popular. I just want to be right. And if you're right, you might become popular. But that's all I want. I don't care who takes advantage of anything. I don't care what pictures are taken. I'm not in the first grade or second grade or kindergarten. I don't know what's going on anymore because I'm getting confused, and I've been here a long time. I'm not trying to knock down this administration or this council or this CRA. I just want to get the damn job done, period. Any way we want to go, let me know. But I'm not going to sit here and continue listening to bashing of any mayor. That's it.
Thank you. Attorney Shepherd.
This is a suggestion, and I don't know, I know you could do it, but I don't know if what I'm about to say from a practical standpoint is impossible. One of the ways to get the accountability you would need from a communications professional is to have them contract directly with the agency as opposed to with the city. And legally you have the authority. Practically, I'm not sure whether that would work.
We do that already with HCP, so
Yeah.
we could do that.
And so that way you draft a contract that tells them who they report to, what their responsibilities are, what they're supposed to advocate for, what you're expecting from them. So when they're in a room with other Tampa communications professional, they are there by contract to advocate what you're asking for.
Well, then I think we need to, if we do that, it needs to be incorporated in the agreement that the city communication department will basically incorporate that into their process as well. And we have to obligate the city to do that.
But I would argue that would be the role of the communications person we would hire.
Correct.
And it sounds like Director McCray has something to say.
Yes, so currently we work with a representative from the city's communication team, Ms. Jennifer Holton, who we have a good rapport with. Ms. Parks and I were on a meeting with her yesterday, just kind of talking through what the expectations were for some upcoming press events for the CRA board related to some approved projects that you all have approved in recent months. And so that she has been our conduit. And then also on the Parks and Rec side, we have some events that are going to be coming on, or parks that will be ribbon cutting later this month. And we've talked to Mr. Holyfield, who is the communications person for Parks and Recreation. So we are having those conversations with the communications department.
Yeah.
I have a quick question for follow-up on that. Where are we in the application process for a communications person for the CRA?
So because of the conversation with the services agreement and having reviewed Mr. Carlson's document, we and I think I've just talked to each of you respectively, a majority of you, in recent months related to whether or not you support moving forward. Yeah. But we wanted to get this clarified first before we actually onboarded anyone and going through that process.
I mean, it sounds like the consensus is that we do want someone, but Board Member Clendenin.
I'm fine with that. I think that Councilman Carlson's points are well taken, and I will say that I've seen significant shifts, and I know there's been in the communication department, my communication and relationship as the council chair has been outstanding. It really has shifted dramatically. They've been working really closely on different issues, as y'all have seen, with incorporating into things, as far as the council side of the house. Working with council and communications, getting press conferences and notification. I don't know if your calendars you're getting the save the spaces and stuff. So we're getting a lot of that communication that we may not have had when I first got on council. As far as this, I think that incorporating so that we have a clear understanding, and I think it was Councilman Carlson's objective here, of relationships. So obviously having this person, but I think it needs to be clear in the agreement, Mr. Shepherd, that it is the expectation of the CRA and the city, that the city council, I'm sorry, the city communication staff embeds these into the process so that they're working together and collaboratively with the CRA person. So because I want to make sure that I understand that there's none of us stand independently. Everybody has to, so they have to be able to work. In other words, if we could hire a CRA person, if they're working completely independently, they're not going to accomplish anything.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to be able to utilize the resources of the city.
So can we just say that we're okay with that, subject to?
Director McCray?
So I would like to highlight just recently, last Friday, you received an email directly from me related to the reworking and requests for interviews. And protocol being as it is, I reached out to the CRA chair's office, I reached out to the vice chair, and then to each member of the board respectively to confirm whether or not your availability, and because
At 4:30 in the morning.
right, exactly, and that communique came from Mr. Josh Cascio to Ms. Thrower and myself, related to making sure that board members had an opportunity to opine and discuss.
When is your contract due? When is your contract renewed?
It
When is-
wasn't, it was a
when-
media request,
When is
not
your
him.
contract? Oh, immediate. I was because 8:30 in the morning.
It was not his request. But
10 a.m. And plus, it's Ybor City. It's Latin time.
But we are actively trying to make sure that we're
Yeah.
including you in that information, regardless of whether or not you all may be available or not. But we wanted to, make sure that you were invited and offer the opportunity for you to be able to attend
Board
those
member Maniscalco.
interview opportunities.
4:30 was too early, so I'm doing the 5:30.
Yes, thank you.
Since
But,
you all
but
are
that is,
sleeping.
the point being is that, the director would not have to do the work of the communications. So when I'm looking for a communications person to come on the CRA, I'm going to need them to be very willing to, get out there and fight for making sure the CRA is first, making sure, it gets priority. And I think that's really what we're trying to say here.
And I see the changes that you all see as well, but I have to keep pushing because I think we have an obligation to the public. Are you guys okay with this, subject
Yes.
to the changes that we?
Subject to our discussion.
Subject to our discussion and anything else that Attorney Shepherd might think is necessary.
And you all can give him feedback. The next one, several years ago, we had a strategic planning process. That was while Erica was still here. And the idea was that we need to decide as a board what our direction is. This is different than the CRPs, which is the next paragraph. And yes, we have to, the funding of money has to be defined within the CRP. But an example, until like 7 years ago, most of the CRPs were not really focused on affordable housing, even though that is a primary point of funding in Section 163. So what we did as a board is we said across the board we want to spend 30% on affordable housing. And some, like at Ybor, they hate that, and they fought back, argued. I'm the one that proposed it, and I fell on my sword and said, sorry guys, but we're trying to push affordable housing throughout the city. Now, I don't want to discuss that point.
I was gonna say, you ready to go on that one?
The deal is that the strategic plan, there's a whole universe of things that we can do legally within a CRA. What all the strategic plan does, and we've already done this twice, so it's not creating something new. All this does is it builds consensus on the board about the priorities that we then send to the CAC and as either advisory or mandates to the CAC on how they'll limit within the law.
Why is this in a document within the agreement between the
Because
city, though?
because even if you look at Morris's responses, he keeps saying, well, we have the CRPs, but they don't understand that we have an overriding document that gives guidance to the CRPs.
But wouldn't this be our internal policy? Why does this
Yeah.
have to be an agreement between the CRA and
Yeah.
the city?
Because it notifies the city that we have that and that we expect them to follow it.
I would, I like this. I don't know that I would keep it in here. I might make it a part of
Our standard operating
our
procedure?
standard operating procedures, but I would also change it. Instead of once a year, I would say no less than every 2 years, because if with one being at the beginning of the term of this new CRA board.
Yeah, honestly, I would almost I would go to 3, because you end up spending a lot of time in government with processes, and you create work.
Can I finish? So yes, and that's the whole point, is that a term is 4 years. So if you're doing it no less than every 2 years, then you have the opportunity to do it twice. Once the first year you're in office, and then at least one other time, but it doesn't preclude you from doing it every year if, as things with this council, or with this board, have changed, like we tried the 30%, and now I think we're all willing, a few years in, to revisit that. And so that's what I'm saying.
What about the concept of doing it once every 4, starting the second year of a new board?
It should be the first year, because the board needs to, and,
Don't they have to get their feet wet though?
yeah, but you do it in the fall, or you do it in the summer,
You
and
don't
where
wanna
people
change
get a little bit, because we only have 11 meetings
Right.
of the CRA board.
If you can change it in May next year, then I'll be gone and you can change it. You can take that out.
How many days is that? No.
Mr. Shepherd, what do you think about making this part of the standard operating procedure instead of in this document?
Okay, well, first of all, I think that's the right place for it, and second of all, here's what I would say. Again, now this is a contract drafting principle, but it is also like a common sense thing. If I was, and I'm going to use the analogy, but please bear with me. If I was writing a contract for plumbing for my house, I wouldn't say, I aspire to have a beautiful house. I'd say, put the freaking plumbing where I want the plumbing, and this is the plumbing I want. This is what this agreement should be doing.
Yeah.
To the extent we have internal things as a CRA that we want to do, that we want to impose on ourselves, that we want to impose on people that work for me, they seem out of a place in a services agreement, because all it does is impose an obligation on us where the city says, okay.
Okay.
The problem is that we need to talk about intent, because there's been a lot of confusion, and it really, up until 8 years ago, the CRA was seen by the administration as a funding source for real estate subsidies, and they didn't really do much more, and we all aspired to do more within the boundaries of the law.
Well, if you did have a strategic plan to be a public record, it'd be available to everybody, it wouldn't be a secret, but this is really more of a structural question, is to the extent you decided to adopt, let's say, a code of conduct for the 5, 6, 7 of you as a CRA board, we could stick that in here too, but why? And that's what I'm saying.
But the other thing that happened is that when we got the first executive director, we all agreed that we should create this, and they just didn't do it. The administration didn't do it, and so it also is a requirement by putting it in here, because they until Nicole got in here, they just decided not to do it.
But that's on us. That's not on the city
No, we kept
staff.
asking for it, but
Yes, but we
the
should have
city-
asked CRA staff,
We
not
did.
the city.
We asked the CRA staff. We demanded it over and over again in meetings,
But
and
then we should have fired the CRA. I mean, that's the thing, like, ultimately, it's our job to make sure that what we ask for gets done.
like you all said, we've never had a review of a CRA director, and so this is the dynamic tension between the city and the CRA. A lot of what this document does is it outlines that the CRA board is in charge, not the city. The city is in charge administratively for their employees, but they're not in charge of telling them what they can and can't do. If the CRA directors think they report to the mayor, as we saw in the first slide, then they're not going to listen to us.
Board Member Clendenin.
I don't think it
I agree.
belongs here.
Okay, what about the next one?
Or do we talk about CRPs in the existing agreement? I mean, is this something that is this something that should be?
I don't care if we take it out because it's required by law anyway.
Yeah, that's what I'm confused
Okay,
about.
so we'll
All right.
take that out.
CRA attorney.
Yep, that's
Now-
good.
Now, okay.
Okay, we're okay with that. Executive director, I changed it, the original one I wrote the term director, but there's confusion in the city because that is a title that goes with certain compensation. Executive director is a different position, so we can separately compensate that. Plus it gives, within the city, a director is a certain level, executive director is a position.
Okay.
I'm having any difficulty with the city will provide. I understand.
Well,
the city-
he's gonna change that, remember?
Okay, okay.
So he's
But I'm
gonna
saying
change that for all of them.
Every
Yeah.
single time, place. Okay, good, okay, good.
Yeah, he's got,
on every single
Mr.
one.
Shepherd's going,
Okay.
he already has that
So
direction.
all we really did in that section is change the title.
Well, I think the executive director's performance will be evaluated annually by the CRA board.
Point of order on that. In a performance evaluation, it needs to be a single point of contact. It should be the CRA chair with input from the CRA board.
Correct, and so that needs to be changed, but also, board member Clendenin, acting as chair, just sent out a review for Ms. Kopesky, and I asked board member Vieira to do the same for our director, so I think that's kind of a way to go forward,
Yeah.
but
So we need to add that in.
the CRA chair
Yeah.
with information from the board.
And that, if you look on page 8 of the existing agreement, the performance review is already in there, so
Yes,
it's.
but we want to specify.
Yeah, so this is not,
Whose
the
job
point
it
is,
is.
it's not a new thing. And then, remember I read out the language, it says, the existing contract says, reports functionally to the CRA board and administratively to the mayor. I added words to clarify. It says, for administrative purposes, the executive will comply with city personnel policies, working with the human resource department that report to the city mayor. And then it says for the functional or whatever purposes, then ultimately report to the board.
Yeah.
I don't have any issues with the rest of
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
CRA staff, the purpose of this one is just, this is a big thing that we had left out before, that to make it clear that the staff of the CRA report to the CRA executive director. They still have to follow the administrative goals of the city, but the executive director, probably with feedback from the board, will do the performance evaluations. It's not, the executive director does not have anybody else that person reports to, except us, and then the staff will report to the executive director. They still have to meet all the HR requirements of the city.
I had a question about the last sentence. Under no circumstances will CRA staff work on city projects that are not directed. Oh, okay, never mind, that makes sense. I read it wrong.
Okay.
There's a whole example of that I can give if you want, but.
Okay. Board member Miranda.
I've just heard things again that, I don't know. We've had a couple of CR directors leave, and still nobody knows why they left.
I know why they left.
I do
you
too.
want me
I
to tell you?
talked to them about it.
I haven't talked to them.
You should give them a
I'm
call.
not saying, I'm just saying.
I've
let's not
had
talk about
city
that,
staff, including CRA staff, call me and say the mayor screamed and cursed at them. And I can go offline somehow with the attorneys, I can go through and give you details. But I try not to talk about people's HR issues, but somehow there's the implication that we cause people to leave. But because if we make a decision to do something and the mayor doesn't agree with it, the mayor has a responsibility to come to us, not to yell at our staff and tell them what to do. And it was deplorable that happened. And unfortunately, there were no investigations of any of it.
Both of them left for that
And
reason?
the other guy who we hired and he left within a few hours, he saw that there was disagreement between the mayor and city council, and where he lived in Orlando, he reported directly to the mayor. I talked to him about this, and he had a chance to, Orlando made him a counter offer, and he had a chance to continue to work with the mayor, where here he was gonna get in the middle of the fight between the administration. And we're not the ones that created the fight, but remember, this is the time when the stuff with Dingfelder and Goods and all that stuff was going on, and so he didn't want to get in the middle of the fight. So I'm happy to talk to you in more detail offline.
No, we don't,
Bringing this back to,
can't do that, we can't do that, we can't talk.
we cannot talk offline.
With an
But-
attorney.
No,
it's still
it's still sunshine. So let's bring it back to this.
I have that, bringing it back.
Yes.
I have a question about the last sentence. Under no circumstances will CRA staff work on. Is that currently an issue? Do we work on non-CRA issues, CRA staff?
What happened is we hired an arts person, and this was when Erica was still here. We hired an arts person, and Erica, we decided to hire an arts person. We can get into that in a minute, but what Erica and Elise and Nicole all agreed was that this person was going to work on CRA projects. And suddenly there was an ad in the paper, because I got calls. I'm very involved in the arts community. I got calls from the arts community saying, oh, there's a position open, and it reports to the arts person of the city. And so I asked Erica and Nicole, is this our position? And when they looked it up, they said yes. And what the administration was going to do is have a CRA funded position that was going to work, that was going to be embedded in the arts department and work on non-CRA projects. And the administration insisted that we do that, and the four of us were pushing back, saying you can't do that. It's illegal to use CRA money on city projects. You cannot do that. And the CRA board approved this and so I think we didn't resolve it until Cedric got on board. But finally, that person is working for us. So there are examples that it used to be that the housing people were embedded in housing, which seems to make sense from a synergy point of view. But they cannot legally, Cliff will back this up, they cannot legally work on non-CRA projects, which is what the administration was trying to get them to do. I was on the phone with the Nicola, Lisa, and Erica saying that whatever the mayor is ordering, she cannot tell you to do something that's illegal. You cannot do something that's
Well, I guess
illegal.
that was the gist of my question, because it would be illegal. That's why, I mean,
Yes.
not that I don't object to the language, but is it redundant with law? Mr. Shepherd?
Well, it's funny because of our recent concepts of what is or isn't legal based on the example set at the highest levels of government, but I would simply say that it would not hurt to reinforce that, because as example, I think you don't have to be military to know that as an example, you are not required to follow illegal orders, although there are some who think otherwise for reasons that I will never understand.
Okay.
So
no harm.
No harm.
No harm.
Great.
It helps protect staff from being ordered to do something
Correct.
they shouldn't be ordered to do.
Okay, so we can accept that.
But here's what I wanted to ask, if I can, before we go forward. The two things, executive director and CRA staff, have sort of been merged, and I'm trying to keep my notes straight. The only note I have on executive director is to work on in this particular section, it says that City of Tampa will provide, it doesn't say supplied, and I can work on that language. But is there anything else under the executive director
Yes,
section?
it was executive director's performance will be evaluated annually by the CRA chair with input from the board. I think the CRA staff is fine. I don't, moving on, I don't know that we need then to focus on arts and arts executive if we already have a role.
I think if the last sentence under CRA staff, if we keep that in, it helps resolve the problem.
Yeah,
I agree. So I think we can take that part out.
So we'll take that out.
Yeah.
Okay, on to projects with third parties.
Tampa CRA, you want to put it on, well, Tampa CRA projects that provide funding to third parties will be governed by Florida law and Tampa CRA priorities and guidelines. These projects will be evaluated by Tampa CRA staff reporting to the CRA board. Since Tampa CRA is not directly involved with zoning, permitting, or other issues, CRA staff will rely on the third party to coordinate such services directly with the city. CRA staff's role will be merely to ensure that these projects adhere to state law and CRA Tampa guidelines. This is here exactly for the slides that you showed before. Are they electronic, or you have them on the Wolf?
They're electronic.
Can you just show that slide? The slide he showed in the beginning that said, look, essentially the CRA relies on all the departments of the city. If somebody needs permit, if we're providing funding and they need permit.
If we can get that up, CCTV.
If we're providing funding to somebody and they need a permit, that's not a CRA role. We might tell them to go talk to that. We might introduce them. But if the city is providing permitting for somebody or permitting review, keep going. That's not a service that they're providing on behalf of. Where is it? Construction services, facility management, things like real estate. All we're doing is providing the funding to somebody. If they need a permit, they go to the city, but that's not the permitting is not a service the city is providing. The CRA is a service they're providing to the applicant. That's all that says. It's just to clarify so we don't end up with a list like this.
So there are instances where we partner with other agencies. We have several projects in East Tampa specifically that we've been working with the planning department, and they've assisted and presented in East Tampa on renderings and some of the parcels that we're assembling. So we are working with them
But that's just like if the
partnering.
CDC needed to work with planning or parks or whatever, they're doing the same thing they would do with anybody else, but it's not really part of this agreement. It is just a service the city would provide anybody who is doing something.
Board Member
Purchasing and HR, those are specific services that they're providing.
This seems to be exclusive, so you would prohibit us from doing it? We'd have to use a third party?
Where do you see that?
I mean, in what your discussion here on the, I mean, am I reading that correctly?
No, all this is saying is that
If.
the services, if we're giving funding to a third party and they're using the services of the city, those services are not services on behalf of the CRA, they're services for the third party.
What?
I'm confused.
Yeah, I don't know
Just so
why
we don't
have
end
to
up with a
say
list like this, that the city thinks that any place that a CRA project touches the city, that they're doing it as a favor for the CRA. They're really not. They're doing it as something they would normally do in their regular service, providing services to somebody. If somebody gets a grant to redo their roof and they need a permit, the permitting is not a service on behalf of the city.
Can you, in a concise way, can you back it up and tell me what the problem you're trying to solve? Because I can't figure it out. I don't understand it.
This slide is an example. I didn't know this slide was going to be presented today, but all of these are not services that are being provided to the CRA. They're services that anybody would interact with the city on.
But they are, but because that CRA is in it, as we keep pounding that drum about independent entity, we are codependent on all of these services. Like I mean, every one of our CRAs is codependent upon.
But the ones that there are only a few of these that we're using as services to the CRA, like HR and purchasing, we have to use them. Anyway, I'm okay taking this out. I don't care.
Because I'm confused. Yeah.
Can I
Yes.
get you to go back a minute? Because I want, as staff will probably be pulling their hair out if they read this, the arts executive thing.
We took that
We
out.
took it out.
Okay, I want to make sure, because that is not something we should be involved in.
Yeah, we took it out.
We have a person that's doing art, so if there's a problem, let us know that later.
Yeah, public art, with CRA money, no.
Yeah.
And the purpose of that person is not public art. That's another confusion, but that's how the administration was trying to say that they should be subsidizing city projects. Anyway,
Let's hear that for a second, so we don't move past that. So
Yeah.
what are the restrictions?
Okay, so, well, the restrictions come after the word only. So if you go to 163-387-6C, and don't ask me why I know that, because I have to say it literally every day. But you have 9 things you can spend money on, and they're modified by the words only. You can only spend money on these 9. Well, art's not any one of them. However, the 9th one says also things that are under 163-370, and that's 2A through O. And if you go through those, art's not under there either. Now, people have argued with me, and that's fine. I got a wife, I've argued before. I usually lose those. But the point is, if you can't point to a specific spot in the statute that justifies the expenditure, the only is there for a reason. Now, what does that mean in terms of our grants and so forth? What it means, and I've explained this to staff, is it doesn't mean that art can't appear on a CRA project. It means it has to be something that is functional, which includes art as opposed to art for art's sake. As an example, I was asked the other day about, well, can we fund a mural? The answer is no. Can we build a building, the side of which, when we build it, is painted a certain wild screen, including mural? Yes, because you're building the building. The building is what you're buying, not the mural. If you could put in a bench, there's a bench, and then there's a bench where either end of it may be the face or silhouette of a famous person. Martin Luther King, fill in the blank. Okay? That's art, but it's a functional purpose. If you've been down any highway built recently in Florida that has embankments, they sometimes use those pressed concrete artistic things. That's not art, it's a functioning thing. So that's the way you get public art in a CRA-approved project.
Mr. Shepherd, can you review this past policy of the CRA with what we have as far as that position and make sure that we're.
what if we on a future agenda item talk about art in general? Because when I talk about art, it doesn't even include public art. So maybe I don't want to have that discussion now because we're.
But I mean, I'm just saying offline.
Yeah.
I think he should probably review our, make sure we're in compliance.
Yeah.
And what was your final decision on projects with third parties? Leave is?
Taking out.
Check it out.
Omit, okay.
And if I may, just for the record, that position is a part of our special projects team, and it is not solely based on just public art,
Correct.
for the record.
Thank you. Okay, funding approvals and proposals. This seems more to me like procedure and not.
Yeah, let's take, based on the earlier conversations, let's take that out.
We're taking the entire section, funding approvals proposals
Okay.
out.
Yeah, funding
Funding-
budget, CRA staff working with city staff will compile and maintain a CRA funding budget that will be updated monthly to the CRA board. No funding should be recorded in the Tampa CRA budget until it has been approved by the CRA board. I anticipated funding for projects not yet approved by the CRA board that cannot be held in the budget. This is
Yeah.
a common complaint from the public that
That's
members of
fine.
the public who apply for grants say that the staff are told that tell them that there's no money, but the reason is that the administration has put an item in there to hold money, and so even though they've been told there's no money, suddenly there's $10 million for an administration project. So this is just reconfirming that they can't do that.
Now,
Is this SOP or is this an agreement issue?
I think it's an agreement issue because it affects.
I do think it's, I think this is a process issue. Because the city,
The problem is again, governance, and that's why it's in here. We've had conflicts before. We should bring Nicole in and have her talk through it. But what happens is CRA board says, here's what we want to spend money, and here are our priorities, and then the administration says, well, I want you to put that $10 million project in, and they don't know who they're reporting to.
but right now, we just fixed that because CRA staff only reports to the executive director. And secondly, right now, I have been working with Director McCrae's office for the last 6 months to get these updated monthly budgets. And once those are available, and that's part of the director's report, and we're supposed to review them every month, we should see that. And that's our responsibility to make sure that
Oversight.
stuff doesn't get in there that's not supposed to be. But right now, we are in the middle of solving what I think that problem
Yeah,
is.
this seems like an internal CRA.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll take that out.
Okay, funding
CRA
budget
board
out.
funding requests following their strategic plan, CRPs, and CRA board may from time to time request funding for a project or category of projects. These proposals must be discussed in public meeting. Feedback from the public, they must be approved by a majority. I think that's redundant. You want to
Yeah,
say
it
that?
is redundant because we are going through those processes right now.
Correct, we have an
Yes.
application, formal application
Yeah, but-
process,
but
whether
when
it's
you-
internal with
Yeah,
the
but
city,
that
city
wasn't the
department,
case when he wrote that, so.
outside of the city.
Okay, so we're
CRA.
taking that out. We're moving on to city
The
requests
next one.
for funding
help-
projects.
The next one I think is important because it helps to give a reason why we don't need the other two. But it gets to the examples I gave a minute ago. Funding requests by the city must follow the same guidelines and public scrutiny of third-party projects. The city will not have a backdoor, this is what the public calls it, for funding, and may not reserve budget for city projects without prior approval of the CACs and CRA board. If a city project does not meet the criteria of an open grant request, the city must first present the project in concept to the CRA board, agenda item to be set up by the CRA board in advance. Following concept approval, not project approval, the city project will then be presented to the CAC for approval or input. Once it passes the CAC, it will be presented to the CRA board for project funding approval.
Board Member Clendenin.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I disagree. I think you see some of the bigger issues, like, because we have like, you know, the city functions. I mean, the Straz, the museum, the streetcar, the aquarium, you know, what we've done in Ybor City with the Newman project, which I know is partly probably what created this issue to begin with. But these larger, bigger functioning projects that are city kind of functions, I think that they're so separate and different than these relatively smaller in scale projects that
The
we see right
examples,
They stand separated.
I will disagree with you on this one because I
does
think
the Straz-
the re-bricking of 7th Avenue is the best descriptor of this. As we heard from the Ybor CRA or from community members before the last CRA meeting, they're saying that wasn't a priority of ours. That was put on by the city.
it was put by
Oh, I don't
us.
know. I sat in a CRA CAC meeting when I wasn't even on city council.
But the point being is that if they're, according to our new grant procedures, they're already going to have to go through the same process. And I think that solves the problem. So I don't think this is necessary.
Yeah.
What was Clendenin, what were you saying, you sat in on the CAC?
Yeah, I mean, so prior to me serving on council, I've sat in on several, EBOR, CAC meetings, and they were driving the bricking that was like one of the top priorities for the CAC.
But
was.
for the CAC, but not for the citizens of Ybor.
That
That's
is
what they
That
were,
is the CAC.
but they were saying that back years ago, the CAC or the CRA provided open times for the public to come in and weigh in on the budget, and that wasn't going on anymore.
I don't know, I sat in when it was.
What
I
hap-
don't know what I'm saying, because
what-
I witnessed that. in my
Well,
own
whatever,
house.
let's
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
not focus,
Yeah,
I was
agree,
just
I
using
agree.
that as an example,
agree.
but it sounds to me like the city requests for funding projects, we've already solved that with both of our grant procedures.
Okay.
I would rather have it in here because two examples I would use. One is the Army Navy spot, and the other one is the EDC housing project. You know, all these other projects we're being told there was no money, and
But that was before these processes.
if they follow them, but
So how about this, we just take out the words backdoor, because that's just not good in a contract. So the city I would just say the city may not reserve budget for city projects without prior approval of CACs and CRA board, but I still think that,
I don't think it should be CAC. I think the CRA board, this is an interlocal agreement between the CRA board and the
Yeah,
city.
agreed.
It
This
needs to be
is-
board to
Yeah.
city, period.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, yeah.
so we take out the back door, put in the language that Chair Hurchak just mentioned, and take
Oh,
out CSCs.
no, I mean, the language is already there, may not reserve budget for I just took out the words, will not have a backdoor for funding and.
Yeah.
And then without prior approval, I think we need to take CAC out of all of this because it's not,
You want to just use the first sentence and leave the rest of it out?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay, let's do
Yeah.
that.
So we're just gonna
All
keep
right.
the very first sentence, which says, for the public, funding requests by the city must follow the same guidelines and public scrutiny of third-party projects, period.
Good.
And we can always waive those rules.
Yes, we can. Down to the services provided by the city of Tampa CRA, it sounds like this, first part, we should probably take out the individual roles because the roles should be left up to the CRA board and can change at any time. I oppose having these 6 specific ones because I do believe
Yeah, the
that
only,
it's up to the CRA board to determine what personnel they want.
And I think that we need to worry about that arts director executive.
But that's what I mean. That's why it shouldn't be in here,
I'm
and
not
that's why.
considering considering the context of the rest, I'm okay taking that out.
Okay, so we'll take out the first part, and instead of in addition, we'll just say the city will provide the following services to the Tampa CRA.
Yeah, and
Also, the city will provide services normally offered to third parties, such information on zoning, permitting, et cetera, and maybe, Mr. Shepherd can legalize it a bit more.
Make it harder to understand?
Yes, please.
Perfect. I love it.
Make us have to hire another lawyer to interpret it.
Yes, yes.
What this is saying is similar to the conversation a
Yeah.
while ago, went to that chart. There are services that the city is
Correct.
specifically providing to the CRA.
We agree.
But if there are services that they normally would have provided to a third party, then they're not included in this agreement. They would provide them anyway, like permitting. And then the next paragraph just, I think we can incorporate like a sentence from the next paragraph, and they just say that they may provide.
Where
other
are we? Are we on to other city
Other
involvement?
city involvement, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Other city involvement, maybe.
I think we already took care of that in the previous
Yeah,
thing,
maybe
where it
there's just a-
says, provide other services normally offered, so we should just take the whole thing
Yeah,
out.
take that out.
All of other city involvement, out.
Okay, I like that.
Project funding cancellation.
This is like this one is, I'm using the Jackson House as an example. We should have put a cancellation clause in it, and maybe that's part of the new grant process, and we don't need this, but
SOP, I mean, I agree with you, but this should be an SOP.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
to that point, we've been working with Attorney Shepherd to make sure that we have either a 6-month or a
Okay,
24-month.
perfect. So this is
timeframe.
SOP, we're taking it out.
Performance and, and cancellation.
Yeah, because what we were finding is that, monies will sit and we're waiting on the applicant to get their ducks in a row, so.
And I mentioned the Jackson House only because there needs to be performance in there. If we put the money in 6 years ago and they haven't started yet, then we need to light a
Then,
fire.
period of agreement, I think we just update that to 2026 and 2027, since this is one that will go into, this probably will take till then for us to agree on this. Compensation,
I mean,
oh, I'm so
Before we
sorry,
skip that,
Board
if I
Member
may.
Miranda.
we're talking about.
Past that, we took out,
How do you know what he's gonna say?
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to know, make sure that what we're talking about here now, that the city's offering these services, are we paying the city for this? Am I correct or not?
Correct.
So then these are going to stay in, the one we just mentioned?
No, we're taking out the first sentence and the very specific, the first section we've taken out.
All right, so the city and somebody else is going, well, that's,
Well, no, it's just because the CRA board gets to choose the
That's right.
personnel they want.
okay.
And then we're moving on to the next page, page 10. Now we are on we took out other city involvement.
Got it.
We took out project funding cancellation. So we took out the second one as well.
Got it. Got it.
And then for period agreement, we just changed the dates. So this will be starting at the beginning of the next fiscal year. Compensation
This
is where we are.
This is, and there's other legal language they may want to put under here, but what this is saying is the city can't just burden the CRA with expenses and costs. And also that they should keep the overhead below 5%.
Board Member Clinton.
Practically speaking, I know we have some shifting with the downtown CRA, and they provide an awful lot of overhead costs. And how would this impact how we currently share expenses for the CRAs?
So there is a formula that we have
Correct?
through our revenue finance in the budget office.
Because this may be a poison pill.
Yeah, because I know it's a lot more from downtown.
All right,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
yeah.
Yeah, so can we take the last sentence out?
Yeah,
Okay, disregard, Cedric.
Okay.
yeah, the last sentence on page 10.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
about an overhead low thing, that's gonna go?
5%.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, because we can't guarantee that 5%, because for our rich CRAs, it's a lot more than 5%.
and then on the next page,
Hold
beginning,
on, are we okay with the compensation otherwise? Yes, okay, only the second sentence.
on the next page, it's still part of the same section. It says the current year budget is attached. And then it says that a reason to have that is so the public can see what the numbers are and the city can't come back and just change it without telling it. And then the other thing says that no CRA services or staff can be used to subsidize city services.
My only concern with this, I'm
No,
sorry.
Go on. I was just going to clarify that means that before they do anything, we have to approve it in the CR board before they send out a check or receive a check.
And also,
Yeah.
also staff, like if they ask our housing staff to work on a project in South Tampa, they can't do that. And so it limits, if they ask,
Without our approval.
it has to meet all the guidelines of everything. So we as a CRA board are responsible to make sure the money and staff are spent correctly. And if somebody in the city wants to use it incorrectly, we want to make sure that we're covering it.
We also sit as council members, so that means we also can look at what we're doing, because you have to, if you're saying it's correct, one hand washes the other, and you have both hands in one body, and that's what we are.
Yeah.
My only concern is that we're attaching a current, it says current year's budget as approved by all parties, and my concern is that we often
Okay, you want to take that out?
change things, and I mean, I would hate to have someone look at this agreement and see the attached when we as a body have amended it.
Let's take that out.
So we're taking out the first sentence that said the current year's budget is attached as Exhibit 1, because that budget often changes. But that we're keeping the second
The
paragraph.
payments, I don't care if
Yeah.
the city has a better paragraph, I don't care.
Yeah, I don't want to take the flexibility away from how they do. I mean, it's beyond me
I-
how these things
I think I copied and pasted that, but just.
We'll take the payments out
Okay.
unless, yeah, we'll hear what the city has to say about that.
And then exclusivity, this just says that we have, just like we work with HCP, we have the right to buy services outside. We're not,
Yep,
I mean, is that, are we restricted from doing that now?
we have to go through city purchasing and
Yeah.
city legal, but we can. It just means that, I think it's important to put in the contract so that, and we don't know what the relationship's gonna look like in the future, but we don't want anybody to think that they're totally dependent on the city.
I think going back to Chipper on the other.
put your mic on.
I think that, just for clarification, is a good for reference Cliff.
Board
Chipper's
Member Miranda.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to ask another question on payments and so forth. And what happens to everything we've done today if this administration says, no, I don't want it, you all go out and do what you want? Create your own. I'm asking our attorney for an opinion on that.
Okay.
Does the administration have to do it? Can they say, we don't want to be, you guys have put it this way, so you handle it with other people. You have to hire your own people to do whatever we're doing for you, and I don't want to get paid.
Okay, so.
I'm just saying it's an assumption. I'm not saying this is happening.
Right, I got that. So the answer to that question is, you could theoretically have, what happened in the federal government, a shutdown? If we are reliant on things from the city that we cannot realistically provide for ourselves. Now, we are required by law to follow the city's purchasing policy, so regardless of whether they give us even a red cent or do anything for us, if we provided everything, we acted, I can't say independently because that's confusing, we are a dependent special district, but if we were able to do everything for ourselves in-house, not maybe efficiently, but nevertheless we could do that, that is the option of what happens if they say no to what we're asking them to provide. But in theory, unless it's a policy difference, we're simply, or what the agreement is supposed to do is simply say, we're contracting for you to provide certain services to us because it makes sense monetarily, and as long as you agree to provide them, we're good. So you could literally have almost like a line item veto. Well, we're willing to do A, B, and C, but we're not E, F, and G. That's how this could go. But if they say, you know what, we're tired of doing business with you altogether, then depending on your governmental structure, and this is where I'd have to get with the city attorney and go back and forth, and your charter and what it provides, they may or may not be permitted to do that. And also, and this is a critical factor, is I don't know what interlocal agreements you have with the county, because those are also something that the city would have to have a significant role in, and they wouldn't want to violate those. And a third possibility is, I don't know if the CRA currently has any bond debt, but if it does have any bond debt, then that would be something that also weighs into what the covenants say. So if I take all of those out of the consideration and just consider the fact, what if the city says no, quote unquote? A, do they have the authority? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know, that's a charter question. B, what are our options? Do it ourselves, all of it ourselves, at substantially more expense because we don't have the ability to cost save in the way we do by using the city who's already got some of these things under contract and can do them for us. What do we gain? Complete and utter independence from control in that regard, except to the fact that you are also city council members. So that's the answer.
Yes, Board Member Carl.
Yeah, I don't want to go through that process, but and hopefully that won't happen, but we've never compared what it would be to outsource. Like if we had an outsourced HR department and we told them they had to follow the city policies, then I think, but anyway, I don't think we have to worry about that. Can I just say for brevity, the rest of this from cancellation agreement down is all cut and paste. Can we just delete that? And then,
delete it?
And yeah, and so it's already in
okay.
there. And so we're doing is
cancellation of agreements, records, non-assignability, modification, amendment, extension, and headings. Well, but not only that, page 14, which is Exhibit A, which is the budget, what we said that we were taking out.
So all of that is is just cut and paste. So I think we were gonna.
Molding all the things we talked about.
Yep.
Molding all the things we talked about today with the
Okay.
current contract and making sure that we're in compliance with state law is now Cliff Shepard's.
Yeah, thank you all.
Okay, do we have, Board Member Miranda, anything?
I just want to make sure, so
Okay.
what did y'all went by, I get lost,
Sorry.
payments, what did y'all decide on payments? Stays or goes?
Goes.
Okay, omit.
Let me see.
That was goes, we struck it out because we want the flexibility of the finance, because
And-
Yeah, we took the payments out, yes.
And
We kept
exclusivity?
we kept exclusivity? Yes, and then everything else from there
Okay, I got that.
on is out.
Those are the ones I wanted. All right, I'm good.
Anything?
I'll just tell you what I'm gonna do, okay?
Okay.
So we're all on the same page. I'm going to use, so don't freak out when you see it, the structure of the city agreement that we already are under. And the reason I will use that structure, it is be familiar to the lawyers on the other side and make them more comfortable when they review it as something that is not a completely foreign substance. Secondarily, I will make any changes to the language you have here, but not for substance, just for clarity. And I will make sure that the parts of the old agreement or the existing agreement that I keep will harmonize with these, or those parts will go. In other words, if there's a conflict between the new that y'all talked about and what's in the existing go.
And you'll have a document.
Board Member Clendenin.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's tough
I know.
reversing roles. You'll have a document, so it'll clearly identify that for us as we review it. I'll be able to see the highlighted changes and.
The good news is because I have Mr. Carlson's, I think I still have it in a Word draft, but if I don't, if you could send me it in a Word, that makes the comparison easy. Then I take that, I also have a Word draft of the city's version, and then I can kind of put them together as appropriate with the red lines, using the city start as the master document, and then the changes from the Carlson document as the red line.
And my only request is that you make it really hard to understand, like lawyers do.
I will add so much boilerplate it'll make your head spin.
Okay, you're not the funny one.
Sorry.
You're the school
No,
teacher.
but just,
Yes, but he's not here.
add the legal things that need to be added, is my only request.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not a problem. I'm very good at obfuscating when necessary.
Excellent.
Thank you all.
Anything else, Board
Thank you
Member
all so
Carlson?
much for going through this process and
We're going
taking the
back to
time. It's an
public
important
comment.
discussion.
Thank you, yes.
And then,
Oh, I'm sorry, Director McCray.
Yes, good morning again. I wanted to answer Mr. Miranda's question, relates to the FY '26 cost allocations across all the CRAs. That amount is 1.4 million, a little over 1.4 million for services that are provided.
They billed you for.
Correct.
Okay.
Out of a
Board
total-
Member
out of total
Clendenin?
budget,
Okay.
Percentage of
Yes.
our budget, do you know?
Do you know what that percentage is of the budget?
We're paying for overhead or for administrative support.
I have a breakdown of what the percentages are for that amount per district, but not the overall.
That's okay.
Okay.
We get it in a future meeting. It'd be
Okay.
good information to have.
that's the total this year. I thought that was the total from a couple years ago.
No, right now, our budget analyst, Ms. Gobble, provided the information to me last evening. 1.4 million is what the cost
Okay,
allocation.
if you find that it's different, can you email it to us, please?
Absolutely.
Okay, Board Member Miranda,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Microphone.
But that also, your side of it, you went.
put your
from
microphone on.
90 to 21, that's what I remember, right?
Correct.
Like 150 or 135, 140% increase, right?
Yes,
Something like that. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we are going to allow for public comment, 3 minutes. And I will tell you right now, I am leaving at 11:30 for an event. So I will be passing the gavel to Board Member Maniscalco offered, or accepted when I asked. So he will be chairing the rest of the meeting. And I promise I will listen and add any of my suggestions to, or not listen now, but watch the tape and provide suggestions to Executive Director afterward. But in the meantime, public comment.
Allison Hewitt, thank you for the line by line going through. Challenges with a couple of sections for that. When you say go over the strategic plan every 2 years, reminder that East Tampa only has 7 years left. If you're pushing it out 2 or 3 years to go over the strategic plan, you're going to be putting us at deficiency. Also, we have in Article 1, redevelopment services and public improvements, all the list of the actual services. That's still very permissive. There's nothing in what you discussed today that would make the staff do the work. When you even as you say, our responsibilities, Madam Chair, when you ask for information, it can take years for them to get back to you. There's nothing in here that guarantees timelines for the money you're paying. It doesn't say, I've talked to Manager McCray, and he has said it's very difficult sometimes, you know, how hard we have to fight to get things through the administration. Nothing in this document now even still protects that. You know, you did a lot of discussion that was very important, but the key to be able to make sure, especially for East Tampa, who only has 7 years to do anything, there's nothing in this agreement that says, if Board Member Clint Ennis says, what is your housing plan, and it takes them 2 years to get a housing plan, there's nothing to hold the city or the CRA responsible for not being responsive. If we go through purchasing and have a homeowner occupied rehab, it takes 5 years for that program to go through, there's still nothing in this that says after you paying them $1 million, they're responsive to you. So there is still, it's very permissive. If you go to Article, sorry, went to my Bible there. Article 1, redevelopment services, public improvement, assist the agency in implementing, assist the agency in acquisition. It's all assist, it's all permissive language. There's nothing in here now still that you have discussed that makes sure that they are responding to you in a timely manner and gives you some type of ways to be able to keep them in check. So I wanted to be able to say that that's not in there. Also, the public information, you would be able to have information to the public. The last workshop you had for the grants, they handed out information, and this has happened consistently, handing out information there, not available to the public ahead of time. So we can have our public comment and be able to provide you educational responses, not something that we're just responding to what we heard in the community. So and today, for the community benefits agreement, there's nothing online for me to prepare for what a response for. So they say we're gonna have communication, but we don't get the documents until after your meeting. And so then we're gonna have to try to call your office or come to do public comment, but they do not provide us, the community, with information ahead of time to be able to
Thank you very
bring forward
much.
information. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question of Allison?
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Hewitt, can you say, Board Member Clendenin has a question.
Ms. Hewitt, so looking at the points for Article 1 that you said about that, I mean, I don't know if you have any suggestions, because I can't figure
I
out
do.
how. Oh, do you? Okay,
I have
good.
Yeah.
submitted that in writing
Yeah.
the last 4 times that this has come
Yeah.
up.
Well, I for the
It's
record.
here in this.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to
Yeah.
I did,
publicly state those suggestions, so that
yes.
everybody could hear the same suggestions. And that's why, outside of your 3 minutes, if you wanted to publicly suggest how you, because we can't do public executions anymore. I'm sorry, that's inappropriate. So, but I mean, so it's difficult to have, like, I mean, unfortunately, I feel your pain, trust me, as someone who's been an advocate for expanding the streetcar.
Remember,
how slow everything
this
goes.
is public comment, not a
Right.
conversation.
I know, but I was asking
Okay.
her a question, if you have other suggestions.
In the information I just provided to you recently, I have recommendations on how to insert forcible performance standards, how to strengthen the CRA authority over the staff, how to require annual operational improvement plans, so that will impact the bottleneck process and inefficiencies, and to evaluate alternative governance models, because if we do not, because again, I'm in East Tampa, 3rd generation, unless we undo some of those bottlenecks, then we're gonna be stuck just doing regular projects. And so I did include in the last one, in the last 4, and I can send that out again,
No,
my
it's-
recommendations.
It's right
'cause I
here on
don't-
page 3 of 3.
Okay, because I don't
Thank
come
you.
here with just, opinions. I also try to provide legal references for recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else for public comment?
Good morning.
And I have a suggestion.
Good morning,
Good
Jeffrey.
morning.
Good morning, Jeffrey Johnson. This is more or less in comment to what Ms. Hewitt just said, but
You
it
are
would be
more than
good.
welcome. Yes,
Yeah,
this is
I
your
think
time.
that will be more or less, when it comes to communication, internal communication will be a part of a standard operating procedure
Yep.
that is produced to all of us to know what are the metrics for communication, what's the timeline to receive a response back for something that you have asked for. I don't know if it would necessarily go into this agreement, but I think there should be something that is produced back so citizens will be able to see If you request something, you have 14 business days to receive some type of reply. If a community members ask for something from their CRA leaders that may not be on the CAC board, in which something is asked for through the form of a motion. So I think that would be good to produce something of that magnitude, to have an internal SOP for communication and how responses are received.
Thank you very much. And I think that's kind of what we talked about today, the idea of standard operating procedures, which is what I was going to recommend, putting that into standard operating procedures. But more importantly, or what might be simpler, we have 8 CRAs, but two of those are kind of combined. EBOR 1 and 2 are really one. So that's 7 CRAs, and we have 7 board members. Maybe everybody kind of takes one of those and makes sure it shepherds through all of the particular issues. No, can't do that, sorry. Okay, no.
All of our eyes went directly to Shepherd.
Yeah, so, but ultimately I feel like this is what we're doing with all of the trackers and the budget, all of that. It's our responsibility to read those. It's our responsibility to ask and make sure these things are coming back. Like, we have something on Thursday's agenda that took forever through the permitting department. Is that what it is? We have an RFQ for West Tampa's
For the
alleys.
Yes.
And that took like 6 months. And there's no reason for it to have taken 6 months. But it's our responsibility to continue to ask. Or maybe, a board member, Clendenin.
Here's the problem, and that's what my joke about, we can't do public executions, but it goes back to the thing, we don't have a Supreme Court for the, again, there's no, so you have expectations, but we don't have a
Mechanism.
We don't have a mechanism, and I don't even know if it's possible to have a mechanism. I don't even know without, how do you do that? Just without you reach a point of contentiousness that you have that fundamental disagreement or a fundamental lack of performance. What do you do? I mean, what is the consequences of failure to act? I mean,
so what I might recommend is that for a time with the CRA director's report, we actually start printing out and going through that project timeline, because there's always yellows and reds, and it's a time that we can say, hey, what's going on with this yellow? Why is it being, and that's
I think
really
public scrutiny is
public
probably,
scrutiny.
Yeah.
That is it. That is it. Yeah. That is all we have.
Yeah.
So I think, but if we're harping on it every single month, then also one of us could take the initiative to say, hey, I'm going to reach out to that department too and find out what's going on.
So to be clear, that's the one related to the special project, so you want to go through each CRA district?
Yeah, I mean, just to look overall at it, to say, because what I really love about that tracking report is the green, yellow, and red. So you can look quickly at the yellow and go, oh, this is being paused. Why is it being paused? It gives us a moment to say, hey, what's up with this? Why is it being paused?
So I want to make sure I'm clear. So are we referring to the commercial grants piece, or are we talking about the special projects tracker?
Probably both for the time being.
Okay.
Just to get us into some type of rhythm. If you make us do it 3 or 4 times in public, then maybe we'll start to do it beforehand and just have questions for you. Board member Miranda? No? Okay. Whatever. I've answered worse. Okay, so I believe we have finished section 1 of our 3 sections. We are on to annual performance measures. And I think that also goes, someone asked about making sure these things get posted ahead of time, and I do think that that's part of, should be, again, part of standard operating procedures. So we need to create an SOP.
So related to the performance measures, in 2024, the Florida legislature passed House Bill 7013, which among other things required all special districts to adopt goals and objectives for each program and activity undertaken by that specific district, as well as performance measures and standards to determine if the district's goals and objectives are being achieved by October 1 of each annual or fiscal year. Didn't really have any formal direction last year. We got an edict from folks in Tallahassee and conversations with Attorney Shepard and our counterparts around the state. And ultimately, we just had gone through somewhat of a rebranding and reorganization. So with the key objectives that you all approved a couple of years ago related to attainable housing, connectivity, economic advancement, quality of life, and community engagement. So those were the things that we kind of used to wrap up the report around in working with the consulting agency. And so that document you have, and we provided it again this past December. And I will just say with the board, I did hear some of the concerns from members of the community related to the report itself. I would also keep in mind that we just have gotten to the point where some of the commercial grants programs are up and running now that they've been formally approved. So we anticipate that those numbers will look slightly different in some of the CRAs. Not all of them, but some of them will look different.
CRAs are all.
Board Member Clendenin.
That's because we have CRAs that are not equal parts. You know, they're always going to look differently. So that doesn't surprise me one bit. I'm not quite certain what we're trying to achieve here. What is the outcome of this discussion? What is the goal of this discussion?
I believe the goal of this discussion is to to look at what they created, because again, we are required to do this by the state.
Correct.
And make it more focused on maybe what we would want as goals. Because for me, like, if you look at page 10 on this document we were given, community engagement, create a Tampa CRA newsletter. And I think I just don't see the point to that.
I agree.
So I think that wastes time to actually get things done. And so I think that the annual report should suffice. And so I think that we should take out the e-newsletter and the newsletter and focus more on doing things like project information meetings. And so for me, I think they're just looking for recommendations. And so for me personally, that would be my first recommendation, is to take out the Tampa CRA newsletter. Not that it's not lovely, but it doesn't.
It creates work with no value.
Correct.
Value added for the.
Yes, because our goal is to actually move stuff. So now if anybody else wants to speak on their goals, or if they've looked through and have suggestions, Board Member Carlson.
I've thought the same thing, and although it's very nicely done, I agree with you. It's not, if we're trying to efficiently use the public's money, it's a good idea to take that out. A question for Cliff. On here it says attainable housing or attainable and affordable housing. As I recall, 163 specifically says affordable housing. Mm-hmm. Do you think do we get into a problem calling it attainable housing, or should we call it affordable housing?
I think the answer stems from, and I know this from having discussions with Ms. Reed and Ms. Parks, and the problem is that under the statute now, they use those terms based on incomes, and I think it goes up, am I right, so it goes all the way to 140 now?
Yes.
So, and so no one who actually has ever bought a house would think 140 is affordable, but yet it still fits within the criteria where you can get a Live Local project, as an example, which is supposed to be for affordable housing. So does it run afoul of the statute? I think there's an argument to be made, and in fact, the first time I saw the 140 numbers show up in some of the CRA plan documents, I struck it. And then I was told by those people I mentioned, or at least one of them, that the reason why is because those are the criterion that the FHSA or CA, the corporation that gives these Live Local deals.
You're talking about different, like underneath here it says that we're targeting 80% and below. So as long as that's within the range,
it's affordable.
But my question is just the terms attainable versus affordable.
Yeah, they're not the same terms in my judgment. And if it was up to me setting goals, I would just say affordable.
I think, although attainable is something that we can talk about, publicly, in terms of writing the goals, it needs to say affordable housing because it fits within the law the way it's.
And critically, just because it's not in there doesn't mean you don't get to pursue it. In other words, I'm going to set the stage. This is something that's come upon us as a requirement in the last couple of years. And to kind of very carefully talk about it, because I've told Mr. McCray to also do the same. It is a legislative pronouncement that we are trying to comply with, but that otherwise seemingly doesn't have a purpose.
Right.
So I'm trying to think of a nice way to say that. And so it is important for us from a public facing thing to emphasize what we think is important as our goals and how we obtain them and so forth. That's important. But I'm not sure that if you would ask me, what happens to this stuff once we file it administratively, I don't have an answer for that.
So one other question, the way Mr. McCray read the new rule, it says we have to create goals, I don't remember the exact words, but it says we have to create goals for a program, for each program. Does that mean each kind of grant or each grant, or does it mean the CRP? What does program mean? What level is program talking about? So did I remember it correctly? You want to read it?
Yes, so it, as well as performance measures and standards to determine the district's goals and objectives are being achieved.
For
is what-
each?
It's vague.
But does
It
it
is.
say
By
for each
design.
program?
No, it just says within a time frame.
Oh, okay,
October
I thought,
1.
okay.
Board Member Miranda.
And again, we're talking about affordable housing. I'm all for it 1,000%, but I just don't know what is affordable. Is affordable housing really affordable? I don't know what the land cost
I
is.
would say no, but I'm not the legislature who.
I understand that, but I don't know what the land cost is. I don't know what the building cost is.
We're saying here 80% AMI and below.
Yeah, I understand but what is the what is the person's salary at the end of the day? What, the ones we're talking about 80 and up, when you consider the insurance and the taxes on a house that they're gonna get, what is affordable? And how much do we think that that's gonna last? And I'm trying to help, not to diminish what's there, but I don't see how anybody making $25 an hour can have a house. I really don't.
Well,
Okay, Board Member Clendenin.
I think it might play into exactly what Councilman or Board Member Miranda just said. Under the attainable housing or affordable housing goal for owner-occupied rehabilitation assistance to Sierra residents and owners, you said the measurement is 32 housing rehabilitation renovation program grants. Do we have unmet needs? In other words, is that goal, do we have, are there folks that are applied that do not get money because or should our goal be higher? Because it seems proportionate to the other expenditures of 2.6 for, I'm a big advocate for rehabilitation and keeping people, especially senior citizens and other people in their houses, and that achieves affordable housing because we're rehabilitating existing housing stock. So rather than having to depend on the cost of additional housing. So are we right set here? Because I see, for acquiring 3 parcels of land for $3.4 million, yet we're only spending a little over $1 million on rehabilitation. In the real world application of this, is there unmet needs out there that if we increase this goal, could we be doing more in these areas?
So I would tell you this is based on the previous fiscal year.
Right.
We've already doubled that specifically in one CRA already. The first quarter,
So this isn't arbitrarily binding our hands?
down payment assistance was roughly
Okay.
about $1.2 million. It's probably more at this particular point in time. And the housing rehab dollars were at last count $2.4 million.
So when you
Mr. Shepherd, it sounds like you are chomping at the bit. Can you put your,
I want to make sure that the board understands what staff is trying to do here. If you've ever heard the expression, under promise and over deliver, this is what staff needs to be doing here. Because when we report at the next year what we did or didn't do, what we'd like not to have is a lot of things where we promised here and delivered here. So we'd rather have it promised here and then delivered. He said, for example, we've already done twice what's here. That's the way you want it to be when you report.
And I just want to make sure we weren't taking our foot off the gas once we reached a measurable goal.
no, because these are state mandated goals.
Correct.
Board Member Miranda, did you have something?
No, I'm finished.
Board Member Carlson.
B mentioned the other day about a new rule that says that people below a certain income can't buy homes.
It's not a rule, it's just
Is there a law or something about that? Can you just repeat what you said the other day?
B Park CRA Community Development Coordinator, it's not a rule, it's just statistics.
It's to the point that Ms. Miranda was making, that certain people below, and tell us what you said the other day, if you could. Below
The
what?
individuals, households who make 50% AMI and below are not purchasing homes at the moment because they don't have the ability of financing
They can't
credit.
qualify.
And they cannot qualify, nor are the certain down payment assistance programs not given the subsidy.
So below,
So
probably,
below 50 is very hard to subsidize. You have to have multiple layers of subsidy.
so below
qualify.
50%, we need to target rentals.
Correct.
and then,
That's what I proposed in our March 6th workshop
Yeah.
when I was talking about income and where the statistics lie at the current moment.
Great, thank you.
Before I have to go, I want to throw in my recommendations. As far as community engagement goes, I think uploading the recordings is something that, and making the meeting agendas, I think this has got to be part of that standard operating procedure, but it's not a problem to keep it in. But the other thing I want you to add in as a goal for next year, not this year, because this year I don't know that we'll be able to meet it, is to make sure that we hold independent budget workshops for the community to be invited to. We talked about that at the last CRA meeting. I think that's a good goal to have. That's that one. And I think we just take newsletters out across the board. Let's see if, and then otherwise, I understand why you have to do this, but if we have personal goals ourselves, I think we should just that should probably be part of our annual review instead of part of these
Right.
state mandated, because you want to be shiny and pretty in these.
Correct.
Okay.
And so what we're trying to do is, and the sort of simplest way to put it is, we're trying to check a box here.
Yeah, this is a box checking exercise. Okay, does anybody else have any suggestions? Board Member Carlson.
Cedric, where did these come from? Because these, I don't have the document. You remember the big offsite workshop we did a couple years ago when, I think it was when Erica and Lisa and Nicole were still here. But this doesn't seem to be the same.
I think what it is just simply because they had to create something, they just found anything that was measurable.
And this was actually after that workshop in 2023 that you're referring to.
But these are not the categories that we picked at that meeting.
No, these are strictly because they're measurable goals, that's why.
But those all should have some measurable goals attached to them. Those are the thrusts. And the way I know it is that I would have fought really hard to get rid of a term called economic advancement. That sounds like marketing speak instead of a goal. Okay. And so I think we need to look at this in the context of the overall buckets that we approved, and we ought to replace these headings and put goals in there. We spent hours and hours talking about those, and there was meaning to every word that we chose and every category we chose.
Were these categories chosen because it's what the state allows? I see
It looks like it
Mr.
was chosen.
Shepherd inching for his mic.
The answer is, I don't think, there are some generalities about what we're supposed to do, but we have some flexibility within those generalities. And I think this is a combination of both things. Cedric can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's accurate.
Please repeat that.
I can't.
No, I didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Ms. Hurtek asked whether or not these categories were the state categories, or was it a combination of things that were suggested through what we were supposed to provide and our own? And I said, I think it's a combination.
Correct. And I just had a sidebar with Ms. Parks because she was in the communications role back in that point in time. And yes, these were a derivative from the workshop that
But
you
we
all
should
had in
use
2023.
we need to change them to the actual words that we chose, because the words matter about. What this looks like is that somebody was trying to align them with the T3 gobbledygook, and it needs to be aligned with what we chose, not what the administration wants. We've seen that a lot. I think you all know, not everybody was on the board then, but when when we first tried to get the Strata Center money approved, at the last minute, the administration stopped it, and they delayed it for a month, got a lot of negative publicity for the Strata Center. And in the meantime, the only thing they changed is that the mayor's staff went to the Strata Center and changed the headings of their PowerPoint presentation so that they matched Transforming Tampa's Tomorrow, which I think is a real dereliction of duty. It unnecessarily embarrassed an organization that supports the city asset. And this looks like the same thing. It looks like it's trying to make it align with something the administration doesn't even follow that T3 gobbledygook, and the public doesn't know what it is. We need to have meaningful words that took a lot of input from the public when we developed those. We need to have those meaningful words there that are aligned with what the public wants and needs, not what the administration wants.
And I'll gladly go back and look to see what historically was in place, but from what I'm told, and I remember part of the rebranding.
But economic advancement
this is what we landed on.
Is an administration term, not something we
And that was part of the rebranding process.
Okay, where do we want to go from here?
Public comment.
No, I mean, just, yes, Mr. Shepherd.
I know you're on the timeline, and I've been asked by staff to make a clarification so they know what it is you've asked for. Earlier, you were talking about getting some tracker information, but there's two different trackers, and so they want to make sure they're talking about the same thing. There's a tracker for projects that are large scale over $1 million, and then there's a special grants tracker for grants that are under $1 million, and they assume you mean the one that's over $1 million, but if you mean the other one, this is the time to clarify. And before you leave, I wanted to make sure they could be told which one you're talking about.
Whatever is in the usual report that Mr.
She answered the question.
Yeah,
I
will. Director McCray provides the director's report every month, and whatever the trackers are in that is what I think we should kill a few trees for a couple of months to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're making sure that the projects are moving along. It's our responsibility to do that. Or again, as as Board Member Clendenin so rightfully put it in the sunshine and just talk about it. So I think if we do that briefly for a while, it will help. But in terms of this, where are we, does anyone have any other suggestions for changes?
I don't.
Board Member Clendenin, I'm sorry, Board Member Carlson.
I think we ought to ask staff to go back and compare these 5 buckets to what we approved in our strategic plan, and put those headings in and see if these objectives match.
Yes, Director McCray.
We will gladly do that.
And I think we ought to use the precise words that were approved with the public input.
Yes. And wanted to ask another question. There was a request made to remove the Tampa CRA newsletter. Does that mean not doing the newsletter at all?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. We really would, it sounds, I think we all agreed that we want to just, focus on the work. Let's, and when we get a new communications person, they'll be able to share that on social media. They'll be able to be focusing on, press releases, things like that. We don't need to also have a newsletter, because my question for the newsletter is, who's your target? And if it's people who are already paying attention, then we don't need to do it twice. Yep. Okay, so I have to go now, but I'm going to leave it with Board Member Young has the floor for answering. And do you want to move, or are you happy?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Do you all have, are you able to see how many people read the newsletters, like the stats behind the newsletters?
We have a certain number that we print. We disseminate that to the community advisory committees and you all as board members and other community events. And then it's also posted on the website as well. But technically, we don't know specifically what that total number is.
Okay, and so, and then, okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I see no one. Public comment? Yes, ma'am, come on up. Anybody else wish to speak? Line up against the wall or just come up as you're ready. Please state your name for the record. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Allison Hewitt, East Tampa residents, thank you for this discussion also. Would like to refer you to my memo about the recommendations. One of the things that Councilman Carlson said is that there's a perception with other areas of the city about how the money is spent and is taken away. I think if we did more of a outcome-based metrics, then they would see that the money doesn't just do these big developments, but how many housing units at the AMI, at 30%, 50%, 80%, if we had a checklist to be able to do that. Number of jobs created because we're helping a number of businesses supported. So I'm also having those recommendations there. And also, I would like to require corrective action plans. So as we are doing these performance measures and you're seeing them and they're bringing to you, if you see that in the tracking charts that we're not moving, that a corrective action plan is given to you from the staff on how do we make things move. For them to be able to say, if it's difficult to get things through the city, recommendations on how to move that, on how to do corrective action plans. And also to be able to help the community understand that these plans align with the priorities and strategic plan, but also the CRP, the community redevelopment plan, sometimes get lost in the conversation. And so if we can have them come back to the CRP when they're being able to put out in the community, I'm asking for that. Also, this goes to a comment about the new website that you're going to do. Just want to make sure that if you go on the website right now and you click on the East Tampa Action Plan, the Drew Park Action Plan comes up. And if you're looking for minutes on the website, you will not see any new minutes. You'll see it on YouTube. And so if we're going to have performance measures that are of that nature, we need to make sure that just because they're up there, we need to make sure that they're actually correct information. Also, all CAC meetings are not equal. If anyone watches the West Tampa CAC meeting on YouTube, we don't have as good as the other areas for the recording. So I'd ask for that we invest the same amount of money into the same infrastructure to make sure if we're going to be filming the CAC meetings, we all understand them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Johnson.
Good morning, again, Jeffrey Johnson. The conversation came up about removing the newsletter. I will ask that you will reconsider that. That is a metric of communication for you to be able to track what you're doing in each CRA for the community to be able to see that. I think you can focus on the work as well as updating the progress of what you're doing. Not only that, that communique helps build your annual report. That is your impact report to be able to measure your numbers, but is also that newsletter is able to identify what you're doing monthly. So that is a way to get information out to the community. They may not be able to see a director's report, they may not be able to come here, or they may not be able to understand a concise document, but something that is put down in a concentric way that the community can understand what is happening in their CRA and they can easily track that. Oh, this month, so many down payment assistance persons receive dollars or whatever that may be. I think is a colorful way to be able to track that. You can walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. So you could do the work, but also updating the community. That's what the CRA is for, is to develop the community and they can see what is happening. Also, I shared, and I will share this publicly with Ms. Parks to be able to help Board Member Miranda and the rest, anyone else who may have comments about the AMI, to be able to look at it from a chart perspective. How many household members do you need? What is the annual income for what you qualify for? I think if you're able to see that, then you'll be able to see how do we track how many persons in that particular community or neighborhood based on the median income in that area that we should be targeting and supporting. Also, there's a way that you can convert housing vouchers from the housing from the housing authority to mortgages, then working with your housing counseling agencies. Well, if there is a credit repair problem, then most housing counseling agencies are CDFIs. They have small base loans to help persons recover with their credit to get prepared for a mortgage. There are a lot of tools that are available, so I think the more tools that we have that we share out in public, that will help towards home ownership. So those are a couple of things I would like to share, but please reconsider that communique to be able to give information to the community about what you're doing and how to track that, how to build that for your annual report that people can see what's happening monthly.
Thank you. Sir? Please state your name.
Jack Smith, I'm the Director of Community Insights and Engagement at HTP Associates. So I want to echo what Dr. Johnson was saying related to the annual report and related to the newsletters. That is how we tried to structure it this time around, is that the newsletters are supposed to build upon each other so that it makes the annual report production a little bit more seamless. I do welcome these conversations related to kind of how we want to structure it or the information that's about there, but I do think it's an important channel. It creates some officiality to it. And additionally, I think when we talk about distribution, another metric that we could get, but we need it from the city's team, would be how many clicks it's getting or open rates on it, but we don't have access to that on our side. So I would caution against getting rid of that. I think it's an important tool and it's something that we've been handling in terms of development and the content. We do talk with staff about what stories will go in it, what to include, what not to, but we ensure that every district gets represented at least with one story. It offers an educational component, and so I think ultimately it's something that we should continue to do. Again, ultimately it's at the board's discretion, but those are my thoughts.
Okay, so
Thank you.
per what you just said and Dr. Johnson's comments, is the board having second thoughts on getting rid of the newsletter? Yes, sir, Clendenin, and then.
Is this something we contract and pay you to do?
Yeah, it was a part of the original, it was part of that last 12-month scope that was approved in March of 25.
How much we pay for the newsletter?
I'd have to go back, but I think it's around $2,500 per.
Per newsletter, and we publish one every month?
It's not one every month, it's one every quarter.
Every quarter, so
Yeah.
100,000 a year.
No, 2,500, 2,500.
2,500. I was
Yeah.
I was going to go. Oh my God.
Yeah,
No, you're giving me a heart attack. I'm thinking, okay, 25. So it's only $10,000 a year.
Yeah, and last year we only did two based
And
on
how
the
much staff,
timeline.
Cedric? How much staff time is spent on this?
Good morning again, Cedric McCray, Tampa CRA Director. So we have weekly meetings, bi-weekly meetings with HCP related to various items, the annual report, the newsletter, and we disseminate that information. Normally, Ms. Thrower is the conduit to get that information there, and then we build out the stories that are listed and showcased. And so that goes to any of our special projects, our commercial grants, any recipients, we pictures, different community events, tabling, housing successes, all of that is we try to use that to highlight. We've actually highlighted members of the board in there and new staff that has been onboarded so that the community at large knows who's being added to our team.
Is this redundant work with what we're using for social media? In other words, are they symbiotic with each other so that we're not doing extra above and beyond? And I want to know. I think part of our concern is that, in essence, newsletters are kind of antiquated. They're the buggy whips of the. They're not necessarily the way we communicate any longer. But so is this? How many resources are we getting? Are we using to be able to get? How much more return from what we're doing for either the newer types of technology? So
I would take it back to each of your constituency bases. Mm-hmm. If you're in a certain district, people want to be able to touch it, feel it, and read it, and that's the form of communique that they may be used to because. Oh no, I get that, but I'm saying how much more resources are we using to create a newsletter above and beyond us accumulating and doing everything else for all the other way we distribute information? I mean, is it? So obviously the $2,500 a quarter, de minimis. Mm-hmm. So, but how many more staff hours do you think are being used to be able to create this that is exclusively just for the newsletter? Well, you're hearing from the gallery over here,
well,
but yes, it's
okay,
not
here,
as much.
I heard a unanimous minimal over there, so then I'm willing to reconsider that motion.
Yes, ma'am. Wait, Young and then Carlson.
I would say the same thing. I think that's why I was asking earlier, like, do you know how many, people are actually, like, reading it, like the clicks? But I do think it is some form of communicating with people. And the point that you brought up earlier, as far as using it, to do like your annual report, because you're already putting those numbers in, so you already have them kind of to help, and it helps that process to go a little faster and smoother. So I would say reconsider, knowing that it doesn't take a lot of time and it's not super expensive. I would reconsider bringing it back. That was all.
Thank you, Board Member Carlson.
Do I remember correctly that it's printed also? It's not just email?
Correct, yes.
How much does just the printing cost, though?
Roughly,
And
I would say less than $1,000.
and are we mailing it, or are we just?
No, the way we disseminate is when we table at events, we'll provide it to the board, we provide it to our CACs. They're normally there
So you're saying
available for individuals that are
$1,000
attending
per-
the meetings.
I would rather just make it all email and then try to build up so that leads to my next question. You said it's not possible to measure it. Do we not have our own email service, or are we using the city's? Is that why we're not able to measure it?
So we still are using the city's current system that we.
Because we can get a constant contact or whatever for $50 or less a month, and I suggest we just do that, because if it's complicated to measure, or we can't measure, then people can just opt in and we can start building. That leads to the next thing, which Board Member Hurtak mentioned, which is audience. If we're just talking to the CAC members, it has a little bit of benefit, but if we're able to grow it and see the results of growing it so the community is more engaged, then it would be worth it.
To address your points, we can do the email version. We have been aspiring to do that. One of the biggest things that we had is that kind of having the robust email list. We have a very strong list from the time during the Ybor City, which is about 1,700 people. So that's between business owners, property owners, residents, and the like. Those lists are smaller. The one thing I would recommend also doing is changing on how things are structured in terms of signing up, because right now, if you go to the CRA's web portal on the Gov's website, it only allows you to put your email in, so we can't check about what district they're coming from or they're interested in, because that would also then allow to target future kind of content directly to them. So in Ybor in the past, we had done what were called flash emails. So for something like 7th Avenue bricking, we're able to just put a quick email together, send it out to everybody to notify the public. We don't have those robust lists for every district. But changing that process on the website would allow us to start to build that up and to do this digital thing and remove the print option or reduce the amount of printed copies that are being.
Yeah, I think the printing, you also have to design it for print.
Yeah.
And instead of designing it for email. And I think that maybe you can talk to Cedric about this and come back to us next month. But if we had our own constant contact account and you were able to figure out how to have people answer questions, so we could start to create 8 different lists or whatever, and give people the chance to opt in, then you probably could run it more often and feature simpler stories. But the idea is to communicate to the public, not just to communicate to ourselves. It's not. I know the law doesn't want us to use marketing tools or promotional tools. But if it's an email and we're sending out regular updates, then it's a communication and informational tool.
Yeah, no, completely understood. And right now we do maintain a MailChimp account. That's what we've been using since our time with Ybor City. So there is already something that we're utilizing, but I think that we can improve this efficiency and utilize it more and to make those enhancements that were discussed. So yeah, that could be a conversation for next month. I'm open to it, so.
I think you were talking about if you guys could talk to each other between now and then, if we use the MailChimp account, for example, then we can measure metrics. We try to promote having people sign up so that we can start to target the public and we can add lists in, and then we have people answer questions ideally so we can create maybe 8 different lists of which area people's in, or a 9th one if there are folks that are not in a CRA district that are just interested in everything, and then you all could send out information more often. But anyway, if you want to come back to us next month and let us know.
All right, so the newsletter stays, and per the comments of Councilmember Carlson, so we're not going to scrap it, and we leave it for now. Anything else, sir? No? Is there anybody else in the public? The gentleman in the suit? No? Okay. All right, we have one more item. Is it the community benefits agreement?
we could pull up the slide there. Thank you. So as our commercial grants team and special projects teams are looking at some of the revisions, we've uncovered somewhat of a unintended consequence. The CRA benefit agreement policy, or CBA policy, was adopted in 2021, and currently requires a CBA for projects that were CRA, where the CRA contributes $500,000 or more. Currently, the process requires a private developer to negotiate a legally binding agreement directly with an eligible community organization. If you look at the City of Tampa's Community Benefits Ordinance adopted in 2023, it requires a CBA for projects with a total construction cost of $5 million or more, and a City of Tampa and CRA contribution value at 20% or more of the overall project value, or $1 million or more. The process requires private developers to negotiate legal binding agreement with the city, and includes an advisory council appointed by the mayor and the city council. So the two concerns, recipients of the awards of $500,000 or more are required to execute the CRA's community benefits agreement. And then the second one is that recipients of awards of $1 million or more with an overall construction cost of $5 million will be required to execute both the city and the CRA's agreement.
Anybody from the board? Nope. Yes, ma'am, come on up.
Hi, Andrea Rossi, I'm in Tampa CRA. Basically, according to what we've been hearing from the CRA attorney, is that there are projects that could potentially be subject to both of these CBA requirements, and you can't legally do that because it's like double dipping. So I think in the discussions for the City of Tampa CBA in 2023, there were indications that they intended to repeal the CRA's CBA at some point, because that's why the contribution is the city and the county, or the city and the CRA's contributions combined. But the city ordinance cannot repeal a CRA policy, and they never came back to the CRA board to repeal that policy. So kind of the question is, do you want both? Do you want to split them up, projects up? How do you want to approach it? Do you want to? And additionally, I know there's been some discussion that of requiring better oversight of projects over $1 million. But in this particular case, the city's CBA doesn't kick in for project values until they hit $5 million, even though our contribution's $1 million. So projects like the Jackson House, or projects like Walter Smith Library, where we're looking at potentially contributing $1 million or more, the project itself is under $5 million, so it would never reach a city CBA requirement. So just wanted to bring it to attention to the board and have a discussion about what you want to do.
Board Member Clendenin.
Mr. Shepherd? Your thoughts, please?
Well, excuse me. I don't remember which discussions were had on this and when, but I do know that when it was realized you could have a situation where someone had to have, based on the CRA policy, which differs from the city policy, 2 CBAs, that made no sense. And my recollection was that there was maybe a consensus is the way to put it, that the CRA policy should go away, but they created a vacuum at the city level policy, because there is no CRA participation in decision-making of where the CBAs would be, what they would be, and whether even though we would have significant skin in the game per se, we don't necessarily have a voice on the city side for CBAs. And so the suggestion that, at least that I had discussed with staff, is, and assuming that that would be something you would be interested in, is along the lines of getting CRA dollars credit that they deserve on projects which we are substantial participants, that you do away with the $500,000 threshold, go along with the city's thing of $1 million and above, but also insert yourself as a CRA in some fashion, so you have a role to play in what the CBAs are that ultimately get approved. Did I get that right? Okay.
Now, So who wants to come back to CRA with the suggested language of making that happen? Is that an attorney thing or is that a staff thing?
Oh, well, it's kind of a combination, but yes, I mean, ultimately, I think I would draft it.
Okay.
I mean, then I would move that we ask the attorney to work with staff to come back to the CRA board with
Yeah,
language.
we have a motion and we have a second from Board Member Clendenis and Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Any, okay, no opposed? Very good. Anything else? Director?
Just wanted to set the time frame. So is that June, July?
July, we get the budget presented and we're back from summer break. Does that give you enough time, July? Is July good?
With an addendum to that motion come back to the July.
We have an addendum from Board Member Clendenis and Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Board member, you know. All right, thank you very much. Anything else? Ms. Hewitt, Dr. Johnson, public comment, and I see more people.
Good morning, again, Jeffrey Johnson. Just to make sure in your language you clarify who's tracking these agreements from staff to make sure that whatever has been agreed to is actually done. Some years ago, there was a waiver when there was a large-scale housing development project instituted in East Tampa. Because of that, I think it was $12 million, and that community agreement was waived. So just being consistent that whatever you put in place, there are no waivers, that everybody takes the same process to make sure that public input is a part of that, so there can be continuity and consistency, and no one can say that this was done for this developer and not done for that developer as well. So remaining very consistent about that. So that's the only thing that I would share about that. So.
All right, Ms. Hewitt, Ms. McCleary? No, okay. Come on up, please state your name. Thank you, Doctor.
Hi, Allison Hewitt again. Want to make sure that the community benefits agreement, there was not a lot of community outreach, especially in East Tampa, of what they were. And as Dr. Johnson said, it was very surprising that the $12 million project in East Tampa was waived for the community benefit agreement. This reason set for that one is because it was substantial affordable housing. I also would like to point out, in East Tampa, there are not a lot of large-scale properties left to really develop. There will be a lot of smaller-scale properties to develop. And talking to those property owners, they are interested in making sure that they are very good community partners. And so if there was a smaller project that would like to enter a community benefits agreement, I would like to make sure that we are offering those smaller projects, because most of those folks from the community are there generationally, and they want to not only just build on their project, they want to show some type of benefit. So I also want to make sure that as we are doing the 1 mile for the people who will sit on the committee to put together a community benefit agreement, that if we are rewriting this, that maybe we, instead of just putting a community person, we actually say maybe a CAC member to sit on that committee that is negotiating the community benefits agreement, if we are just want to have the CAC and the CRA with skin in the game. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, come on up. And then also the clerk has asked after that we have a motion, I guess, for the board to cancel the motion regarding getting rid of the newsletter, just to make it official. So, yes, ma'am. State your name.
Vanessa McCleary, CDC of Tampa. In terms of these community benefit agreements, they are good when they reflect the whole community. My concern is that a lot of times people will have a meeting that no one shows up to, or a few voices show up to, that there ought to be multiple streams of outreach to the community to get input for those community benefit agreements, and not just a meeting that's maybe scheduled at a time when people can't really make it and the voices aren't really heard. So then you have 3 people deciding for 100 people. And so just want to be sure that we can do something to do better in terms of outreach, and that that outreach is measured. So if they've only gotten 5 comments, you need to go back out. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
For Cedric, Mr. McRae, for tracking purposes, this is the problem, of course, when we have these 2 different organizations, the city and then the CRA. Do we have staff assigned to track the community benefit agreement commitments? Is there a mechanism so things don't slip through the cracks?
Yes, we do, and we actually have a good working relationship with Mr. Marin and his team. So, you know, some of the larger scale projects that are going through that process, we are aware of the meetings and then get, you know, frequent updates.
Okay, yeah, are you comfortable with their internal mechanisms to ensure that things don't, okay?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you so much, I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. So can I get that motion
A
to?
motion, yeah, I was, as a person that was on the affirmative side. Oh, sorry.
Yes, board member.
You can do it after the motion. I had a question for Cedric.
No, go ahead.
Speaking, there was a comment about the CBAs being waived. Is that, what instance would that happen with the CBAs waived?
I'm not aware of that. Yes, I'm not aware of that being the case.
Okay, so all right, so, okay.
So a person who voted in the affirmative on the waiving of the, or eliminating the communication via newsletter, and what was the other issue? I can't remember what it was, newsletter or something else?
That was it.
It's newsletter. I moved to rescind that motion and reinstate the communication method.
All right, we have a motion from board member Clendenin, second from board member Young. All in favor? Aye. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to the board for taking time out with another workshop this month so that we could kind of talk through and vet some of the important items as we continue to do this work.
And all your staff, because this is a lot of work, and the members of the public that came here, because this, I mean, you go above and beyond, and we appreciate you, so.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I also want to acknowledge Councilman Carlson for having the skin in the game on this as well, because he brought a lot to the table. Is there anything else from staff that we haven't, that you guys need, or Mr. Shepherd, that we have not resolved today that you're going to be able to bring back? I know this is a big ask for you guys, a big lift.
From a work standpoint, no, but if you have any suggestions from mental health, I'm listening.
Okay. Very good. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you to my colleagues for carrying this on. Thank you to Cedric and staff and Mr. Shepherd for indulging us in this important conversation.
Did you prepare that document yourself?
The contract?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with different kinds of input. I actually wrote it and then I lost it somehow and I had to rewrite it from memory. So I wrote it twice.
No, it's very impressive.
But,
it's a lot of work, so.
Anyway,
good.
thank you all for indulging in that. I think we made some good progress.
Yep, yes, sir.
And just to confirm, as we go discuss we were just talking about the CBA, we are not proposing to rewrite the agreement. We are just adjusting what triggers them to initiate this established City of Tampa CBA, and revising it to include CRA representation.
Yes, sir.
So,
all right.
And I got a thumbs up from Attorney Shepherd, so
Yep,
we're
a
on.
nod and a thumbs up.
Motion
All right.
received and
No,
filed.
any new business? No, nobody?
Second from recent file.
We have motion received and filed from board member Clendenin, second from Councilman Miranda. All in favor? Aye, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.